Na ni mtu wetu manze, we demanding for justice. No justice, no budget.
Kwa hiyo kama hakuna haki hakuna bajeti. Ni kauli yake bingwa hapa ambaye ameweza kuandamana eneo hili. Labda tu niweze kuendelea na safari yangu kuelekea katika jumba la Jogoo ambapo kama nilivyokuarifu kulikuwa na uwepo mkubwa wa maafisa wa polisi ambao wameweza kuwasili eneo hili. Kumbuka kwamba barabara hii inaelekea moja kwa moja hadi katika majengo ya bunge ambako wabunge na vile vile waziri atakuwa anasoma bajeti muda wote kuanzia sasa. Vitoa machozi vinazidi kurindima eneo hili. Waandamanaji wakiweza kukabiliwa vikali na maafisa wa polisi. Labda tu niweze kusonga eneo hili na mpiga picha wangu niweze kuonyesha nje ya jengo hili la Jogoo taswira ilivyo. Maafisa wa polisi wameweza kuziba eneo hili, wengine wamejihami kwa marungu, vitoa machozi na hata zile bunduki ambavyo kama umeona nyuma yangu bingwa walikuwa wanasema kwamba wanarusha live bullets kukabiliana na waandamanaji ambao hawana silaha, walichobeba ni bendera tu. Nikuonyesha sasa, tuvuke upande huu mwingine. Niko na
Okay, tunathina mbere na ukinjira na andiki aito mabite hema kona itiganite cia bururi nigetha tukorwo twikimenya kiria kingi ni ukurura ukona mahiga mayurite barabara uguo ni kuga gutikiuma gutheke ona barabara yatherete uguo ni wira ukirutitwo ni mabitha borithi gutigirira ati ni mageria gukorwo makigayukania mbeu njithi aria magukirurunganite. Uyu ni ungi nake gwiciria reke tuiguka ni araniria na mwandiki witu aronania furufuru niguo kimaniitagwo moroga ni live bullet iko
ndio mwenzetu sisi tukuja kwa vita chochote, lakini nimefika hapo wamepiga wenzetu wawili live bullet kitambo huko ndani ya hospitali, na askari wanatumia nguvu kiasi sana, wanatumia nguvu mingi, wanamaliza watu na askari wale tu.
Hao ambao wamepigwa bunduki leo wamepigwa wapi na labda wamepelekwa katika hospitali gani?
Hapa tu hapa saa hizo wamepigiwa hapa saa hizo wameenda hiyo hospitali. Wenzetu sasa wameenda nao kwa hospitali, wengine wangali hapo chini saa hizi pale kwa polisi hapo chini.
Asante. Wacha nipate kauli ama nipate kuvuka upande huu mwingine, labda ni kuonyeshe. Anasema mmoja wao ameweza kupigwa risasi nje ya jengo hili jumba la Jogoo. Kama unavyoona ni magari haya waheshimiwa wanapita wakielekea katika bunge la taifa. Ni kuonyeshe hali ilivyo, uwepo mkali wa maafisa wa polisi. Hawa ni maafisa wa GSU ambao wameweza kuwazuilia hawa waandamanaji ambao wamekaa nje ya jumba hili la Jogoo. Wanaimba nyimbo, labda tuwasikie wanasema nini. Tuweze tukupata taswira kamili ya hali ilivyo. Kumbuka kwamba hapa ni tulikuwepo juzi tukifanya kipindi cha Gen Z Manifesto ambapo waandamanaji walikuwa wamewasha mishumaa nje ya lango hili, mishumaa ikaweza kuzimwa na maafisa wa polisi, wakaweza kufurushwa na marungu na viboko wale waandamanaji ambao walikuwa wanalilia haki ya Albert Ojwang. Kwa hiyo hata kinachotukia leo si jambo geni, kwa maana kama nilipozungumza na baadhi yao walikuwa wanatarajia kwamba jambo hili litatukia, lakini wao wanasema liwe liwalo, lazima watafute haki ya mmoja wao ambaye ni Albert Ojwang. Ni kuonyeshe tu kuna gari la polisi ambalo limekaa standby kabisa hapa. Pia hawa wanasubiri tu muda. Wale waandamanaji wakifika eneo hili watakuwa wanakabiliwa vilivyo. Wanalilia haki ya mmoja wao, hawana silaha, ni bendera, simu zao mitandaoni, wakijaribu tu kuwahamasisha Wakenya wengine kuweza kujitokeza kwa wingi kuweza kulilia haki ya mmoja wao Albert Ojwang aliyeuawa mikononi mwa polisi. Awali tulipofika hapa
oya na ne retore ndakwirira ati no tuguthi na mbere na kurumanira nayo ni tondu maundu mere manene makuanite muthenya wa umuthi uhoro wigie budget ya bururi na uhoro wigie gikuo kia Albert Ojwang. Andu magithii na mbere na kururugana kuonania mathuguta mao na kwa kuiganira kwao na uria jamba ino irakorirwo gigikua iri moko-ini ma everything. Ndenda wambe tucorere bica, yani twina bururi uhana atia, you know, ta ugo uri urecira bururi witu wikaire tha ici.
Gwiciria ungirora bururi wa Kenya na twambiririe na uhoro wa onorogoti wa igoti tondu turaria uhoro wa budget muthenya wa umuthi. Kindu kiria kinene muno kiratucokia na thutha twita bururi ni gukorwo twi dishonest na tugakorwo ati twina budget ya 1 trillion, 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 na tugakorwo ati maundu maria turabanga na maria tureka matiratwarana. Tari tungirora uhoro wa budget on allocation togu bwana Kimani uga haho. Priority citu ci upside down. Na upside down ni kuga ati sector iria ciagirire gukorwo cikiaroketwo mbeca ciita priority. Okwa ni sector teno tukwaragiriria ya ngirigaca. Ungirora ikoragwo ihana tari sector ire drive na thirikari igakorwo ihana tari hands free ni ya mitiganiria ithie na mbere ikuhota gu fund all the basic structures cia thini wa ngirigaca. Yet ino niyo sector turauga ira andika andu gicunje kia 40 na noyo turauga ira contribute hari ukuria wa bururi na gicunje kinene muno. Na ginya riria gukagia mundu kana hindi ya oko ni president kana no koto president ona atongoria itu manyitane na mauge ati priority itu ni twekira haha okorwo ni githomo. Tariu tukiruga kuma mwena wa ngirigaca tuhuthire githomo ta mufano ta muhiano ni kuma hindi ya Kibaki ndi tukoretwo tugikenerera uhoro wa free primary education no ni urathi wakinya handu gakora nginya na aciari ne marauga atiriri githomo giki giatwikire free ti free tondu niki mbeca iria cirachanerwo kuria ri no cikorwo cinjiganu no misappropriation yacio haha njira-ini ri urakora kwina gapu nyingi muno gutire mabuku ciana ciriragia kuria kou ugakora ati muciari no arabindwo gucoka muhuko. Na otogo bona Kimani agweta haha uguo ni ati mbeca iria maretete cia free primary education ihinda-ini riri iratinirio na nuthu. Na ataramu aria macokaniriirie ithabu riri ria mbeca iria cirabatarania matarite uhoro wa population ciana iria gukorwo ikiingira primary iria gukorwo ikiexit primary koguo tureterera kahinda karitaritu na maya ni maundu magabatie gukorwo ma addressetwo. So in short igiuga ati bururi witu ni urabatara andu serious na mifagire na tukaga gubangirwo gabica gathaka karia ithui turenda kuona na kuria nja no uma wa implementation itikiria ithui turona tondu na okone ta budget ino no present uhare budget njega muno no riu ni twario horo wa mbeca nyingi muno haha iria ciratwika ni cia channel okwa ni mwena-ini wa ngirigaca na mwena-ini uria ungi no mani ati kuri ona deficit ino iguthie igikurakuraga na twagirire kwarariria mana tukera na atiriri deficit ino ni nene muno na igukorwo ikiuma mwena uriku.
Kim tugiuka kirikinya gwo horo wigie maybe president ni tugiuka kuri think horo wigie ngirigaca na gwiciria tondu turayona haha Kimani thirikari ni iraraniirio horo wigie uthondeki waki wa mademu na njira nene muno makiria ni tondu woiga gicunje kia woge ni 80% tu dependaga na mbura nigetha turime 98%. Ugure no tugire 2% niyo makirimaga mategweterera mbura. Agikorwo 98% no nginya tweterere mbura nigetha tuhande ri na sector ino niyo iratwandikira andu aingi muno makiria ri then wita mundu we thirikari okay kono we thirikari ni ukika atia
ni kwigure ndakwira atiriri isi tutuire twiragwo agriculture ni utu wa mgongo wa uchumi wa Kenya. It's the backbone of our economy, meaning economy itu ndingihota kurugama itari na agriculture.
Ni munyiginyigi tore mundu atangihota kurugama atari na munyiginyigi
ungimera munyiginyigi uturaga wheelchair-ini na tukirwa agriculture ri kana urimi ri niguo munyiginyigi wa bururi. Akorwo ni munyiginyigi wa bururi ri tuhota atia gukorwo turauhe 3% ya budget na ni kuri indo turafund over 10 or sector ige in the same budget. Tuge atiriri ndikwenda kuga ni njui muno kuri aria me thirikari-ini but uge wakwa munini uranyonia if I were there agriculture agirirwo kugia na kindu gitagwo systematic allocation ya mbeca o mwaka besides ici basic ikongererwo gicunje kira make sense gia kumemechanize. Tume agriculture no rain fed to mechanize agriculture. Manufacturing industry ya Kenya ikoretwo igishrink consistently for several years. Na by the way wa miroro kona thina ni ati he hindi our manufacturing sector yari anchored on agriculture. twari na kambuni ciitagwo Kikombi ciathondekaga nguo ni twari na tanners cia cotton na ndui no menya agriculture by the way no yo ikuite ngina urimi wa ng'ombe na ngothi ciacio na ndui right kuguo kono tuhote kumekanize urimi ngina wa ng'ombe arimi mafundithio urimi wa ng'ombe mwega agriculture no ina ngina iria by the way it's a very broad sector tando ina forestry no yo ikuite animal husbandry na no yo ikuite crop farming na ingĩ nyingĩ kono tuhote ku-invest in agriculture consistently tugicokagia manufacturing subsectors iria ciarĩ cia ngirigaca tukiuranagia nĩkĩ gĩtũmaga kahũa kaingĩ gaitũ twendagia kembegũ makabii na arĩa angĩ matwendagĩrie kahũa kau wonage nĩ wathi kũgũra coffee ukore quota ya coffee is over 300 quota ya coffee by the way is over 700 shillings right kamukebe karia tuguraga ka Nescafe karia keho ka ngirathi that's quota ya coffee tukaguraga ta 500 meaning a kilo ya coffee ya process utoka kumigura guku 2,000
sure
then ucoke wigue tutiri turakinya 130 shillings kumiendia and then you ask yourself kiuria tiriri what if we mechanized 90% or even 75% of this industry to get tiriri 75% ya coffee ria turiendagia ikoragwo i processed right tucoke tuge tiriri this industry will be county based county government ta Murang'a angikorwo ina coffee substantial makerana na Nyeri ni tunyitane county cigire ikorwo na kiganda coffee yothe ĩrĩa ĩrauma Nyeri na ĩrĩa ĩrauma Murang'a yothe ĩrĩ na Kiambu nĩ ikorwo na kiganda kimwe kireka kira process coffee na gikendia then imagine the kind of money tungihota kuhe ngina arimi aritu in that subsector think about the same oria industry ya and by the no ngina industry iria no twiciragia nĩ thrivĩte mũno tuti processaga 40% ya iria rĩrĩa turutaga kũrĩ arĩmi rĩngĩ nĩ rĩrĩa twendagia na kuicagi-inĩ kũgera kwa nyina wa Njeri na ũrĩa andũ mandĩkĩte iria na andũ na ũngĩcoka wa industry ici ciothe uge nĩ gũcimekanize rĩ wĩũrie ngina industry ya ngothi gĩtĩ imported kĩa ngothi wonaga gĩkĩendio Kenya 300 seti ya 5 neno nĩ ngothi ĩrĩa ikwendagio ta mũkwa mũtuĩku ya kuma ng'ombe ciana haha yathiĩ mũrĩmo matũthondekera gĩtĩ moka matwenderia maita 10 morĩa tũngĩkĩrĩa atĩa then why shouldn't we as a country na thirikari no ĩreka wega nĩ ĩraka kĩganda kĩnene mũno gĩa tanning gĩa gũtigĩrĩra ngothi icio nĩ cia no wega kuga maũndũ marĩa ĩreka gĩa gũtigĩrĩra ngothi icio nĩ ciatuĩka itirendio ciroa cirendio ci ngothi finished tukumerona matige kwendia ci ngothi finished thirikari nĩ ĩthiĩ a step further ngothi icio cia process magathondeka leather items cikendio ci finished products ona ithuĩ tũgĩe na gĩtĩ kĩa pure leather gĩthondekeirwo gũkũ na kĩrendio gũkũ locally nĩguo tũhote kũgrow agricultural sector ya health njugire nĩ very important right in fact you know the backbone of economy tandũ andũ me healthy nĩ mekũhota gwĩka maũndũ maya mangĩ mothe makũrie bũrũri
unfortunately muthenya I think iyo ndarĩ ha on Tuesday ndathomaga ngathĩti na you know gũtirĩ na janjo ya BCG na gũtirĩ na polio thĩinĩ yani kwĩna ũnyihu wacio thĩinĩ wa bũrũri wa Kenya
it's pathetic tucoke tũmĩime 290 billion in fact ndigwĩciria nĩ kũrĩ sector ya heo mbeca nyinyi kũringana na iria iretĩtio ta Ministry of Health ĩtĩtie 427 ĩkaheo 135 ĩkanyihĩrio na 292 billion it's
na ndetono githe ndigucoka kwĩ Wanjikũ mundu gũtukariũki nĩ tondũ taruri gũgũthia atĩa tondũ deficit no yothe ĩroneka thĩinĩ wa taru ministry ya health ministry ya education mbeca ici Wanjikũ handũ orĩire gũkorwo nĩ gũkũruta mbeca ici
mbeca ici cirĩcokwo kuma kwĩ Wanjikũ tondũ toguo ũraigua ministry ya health tũgwa kwĩna deficit kana kwĩna ũnyihu wa mbeca kuri maundu no nginya mari run ku ministry ya health na no nginya kuri cokwo kodo fulani karege kuruta mbeca cia guka gutumika handu hau nikio rikinya handu wigue hari mbeca cia hutio ciragirire ringi guthomithia mwana thukuru no cia divert cia twarwo mwena ũngĩ, na nĩkĩo tugire atĩrĩ tũkĩambĩrĩria twathondeka budget nene no nginya twambe tũikare thĩ twĩyũrie budget ĩno itũ nĩ realistic, budget ĩno itũ nĩ tũĩ harĩa o ciringi ĩgũkorwo ĩkiuma. Na kĩũria kĩu ũngĩũria tũtirĩ na nja njega, tondũ ona thirikari yenyewe ĩgĩthondeka budget ĩno na gũ-present budget ĩno nĩ marona deficit ĩho. Na mwisho mũndũ ũrĩa ũrecoka kũũmĩra na budget ĩno ti thirikari, tondũ no nginya marĩrĩhwo arĩa aruti a wĩra thirikari, na ũngĩrora okorwo nĩ allocation ya executive allocation ciao cia budget yao nĩ mekũhota gũkorwo makĩlani nayo. No mũndũ ũrĩa ũkorwo ũkĩũmĩra nĩ services iria ciagĩrĩire gũkorwo igĩkinyĩra Wanjikũ harĩa. Okorwo nĩ thibitarĩ ĩyo ĩtuĩkĩte a very big burden harĩ Kenyans, tondũ onokorwo nĩ tũrarĩha SHA theri no nginya yambe ĩsupportwo through a system nĩgetha ĩhote gũkorwo ĩkĩnyitĩrĩra mũndũ ũrĩa ũrabatara services cia ũrigitani. Na angĩkorwo kwa ihinda rĩrĩ nĩ tũrakorwo twĩna challenges cia SHA, no ũgacoka ũkeyũria angĩkorwo budget nĩ yanyihanyiha rĩ, ĩrĩa ĩrabandaga SHA ĩno rĩ, na SHA ĩno hĩndĩ ĩyo ndĩrahota gũsupport the system as it is. Koguo nĩ kuga gũkorwo kwĩna ruo makĩria harĩ Wanjikũ ũrĩa ũrenda services ici arĩhĩire through the SHA.
You know, na nĩgetha tũthiĩ Hakim, nĩ ũkuona ta tũgũthiĩ ta tũkũnyitanyitia, you know, ndĩragũcokia harĩa Herbert akiuga atĩrĩ tũtirongerera magoti. But you see, tũrarĩhĩrĩirie deficit ĩgũkorwo ĩkĩonekana, KRA maybe nĩ maremwo nĩ commit target na no tũrĩuga Hakim. Maybe ministry ici nĩ cimirwo mbeca ũrĩa kwagĩrĩire, tondũ tarĩu kwambia kwĩrwo kĩmwana gĩakwa no nginya ndĩkĩrĩhĩre mbeca makĩria thĩinĩ wa thukuru, tondũ capitation maybe tiraigana. You know, he handũ Wanjikũ orĩire kana thirikari no yuge atĩ nĩ tũteithĩtio ona njĩroro yothe na kwaga kuongerera magoti.
Ũritũ ũcio wothe wa kũigua atĩ tũtirongerera magoti, angĩkorwo tũtiramiti correction ya mbeca iria tũrakorwo tũgĩcokanĩrĩria, nĩ kuga rusa haha kana mũndũ ũrĩa ũgũkorwo orĩirwo nĩ Wanjikũ, tondũ nĩ kuga Wanjikũ ndegũkorwo agĩkorana na services cia kũigana, okorwo nĩ thukuru, okorwo nĩ health. Wanjikũ nĩ gũkorwo agĩcoka mũhuko gũ-fund kĩrĩa thirikari ĩraremirwo gũ-fund, tondũ maũndũ maya mamwe nĩ marĩa twĩtaga basic need, okorwo nĩ ta gĩthomo. Mwarimũ nĩ egũkwĩra rĩu rĩ, nĩ tũrakĩenda ciana ithome, nĩ ciũke cukuru nĩ ikĩrĩhĩirwo cukuru, no tũtirĩ na mbia cia kũgũra mabuku. Na tondũ nĩ ũrenda mwana athome rĩ, ũrĩcoka mũhuko waku, mbeca cikwagĩrĩire kuma na thirikari ciũke igũre mabuku maigwo library mateithie mwana ũrĩkũ. Koguo nĩ kuga mũrigo ũcio wothe ũrĩcoka ũcokerere o ũrĩa contributor wa SHA kana ũrĩa wagĩrĩire gũkorwo agĩteithĩka na igoti rĩrĩ rĩrĩa rĩtũmirwo rĩtaiganĩte, mũrigo wothe ũgũcoka kũrĩ we.
Kim, turamurika you know, thĩinĩ wa ministry itiganĩte gũkorwo itirĩ na mbeca iria marenda, twaria ũhoro wĩgiĩ BCG gũtirĩ polio, no wakora kwĩna ministry iraheo mbeca nyingĩ mũno makĩria ũkarigwo atĩrĩrĩ nĩ priorities kana nĩ gwetha tũretha mbeca, tondũ tuiguaga nĩ kũrĩ budgetary corruption, kana maybe kũrĩa tũratwara nĩ kũrĩa tũramenya mbeca ici no tũhote gũci access no hũthũ mũno. Wanjĩra security hetwo mbeca nyingĩ mũno makĩria, ũngĩthiĩ kũrĩa thĩinĩ wa State House nĩ ũgũkora kwĩna mbeca nyingĩ iria iheanĩtwo nĩ tondũ wa mawĩra marĩa kũratuĩka makurutwo. You know, niki kiratuma tuhotomie miena iria muno irahutia Wanjikũ, no miena ingĩ ironeka tetari ta tũngiunĩra ritho tugakorwo nĩo tũrahe kipaumbele.
In fact, no wega kũgĩa na the actual figures. Education ihetwo 71 billion. Energy, infrastructure na ICT ihetwo 500.7 billion. Public administration and international relations ihetwo 321 billion. A lot of money for nothing. National security 251 billion. Health sector, you know, public health na health, you know, ya mwena wa ndagĩtarĩ maturanĩirwo mahetwo 137, koguo Ministry of Health wika ihetwo 132. Agriculture na to wika ina agriculture and urban development mahetwo 78. Economic and commercial affairs iria gũkwĩraga cia mama ibana andũ mahetwo 58, which is the least 2%. Now nikĩo tũrauga atĩrĩrĩ, na Kariuki nĩ atarĩria wega, waima ministry mbeca iria megwĩtĩtie rĩ, na mbeca ici cigwĩtĩtio informed on recurrent expenditure ĩrĩa marona magĩrĩirwo gũkorwo nayo na development expenditure ĩrĩa magĩrĩirwo gũkorwo menayo ta ministry nĩguo mahote cooperate comfortably. Nikĩo ministry ya health ĩkugĩte ithuĩ tũhe bilioni 400 ma 20. Gũcoka momera ĩ hinyũ tũkũmũhe 130. Na njĩra nguhĩ nĩ kũrĩ gĩcunjĩ kĩnene kũrĩa kĩrĩ mwamahe mwamaima na tandũ nĩ mekũrequire maũndũ maya mekwo. What that means nĩ atĩ nĩ ũgũthiĩ thibitarĩ wage ndawa ũgacigũre hau chemist nĩ ũgũikara raini ĩrĩa werwo mũrwaru waku egũtuĩka attended na thibitarĩ services ta MRI na scan na ndũĩ wone ndũgweterera ũthiĩ thibitarĩ ya kando. Nĩ ũgũthiĩ ũkore mũhihinyano ũrĩa wĩkuo itanda-inĩ uge niĩ mũndũ witũ ndegũkoma marĩa atatũ kaba twethe private na hau gegũtũrĩhia raithi akome wakorwo wĩna ũhoti. Tũcoke harĩa tuma mwena wa gĩthomo nakuo nĩ matunywo 43, mwena wa ngirigaca nĩ matunywo ingĩ. Ningĩ tũcokire tuga atĩrĩrĩ mũtu thaa ici rĩ ũra trade na bei the highest in 18 months na no igwa nĩ twa subsidize ile fertilizer. Kuguo twagĩrĩirwo kwĩũria nĩkĩ kĩratũma twathiĩ mwena ũyũ mũno gũteithia resort mwena ũyũ igatwĩra you doing the wrong thing. He lecturer ũratũheaga example handũ tũrarĩ atĩrĩrĩ atĩ mũthondeki wa irio cia ngui athondekire irio cia ngui na akĩrĩkia no ngui aheo ĩkĩaga kũrĩa. Nĩ moragia kĩũria ngui yaregire kũrĩa nĩkĩ. The answer is ngui ndĩũrĩtio ĩngĩbata ĩngĩenda kũrĩaga. Maũndũ mangĩ thirikari ndĩroria mũngĩenda kĩ na ĩrwo ndĩrathikĩrĩria ĩratũhe kĩrĩa ĩreciria nĩkĩo tũbatiĩ no statistics cikamera you are wrong. Andũ acio nĩ mararegire kũrĩa irio icio tondũ ndũramorĩtie kana nĩcio mekwendaga kũrĩa. Andũ acio no makĩire nyũmba icio makĩire industry yo nĩ gũcollapse ũrame collapse ti kũmĩaka ũramĩaka tondũ your intervention was not needed.
Tatutire Kim nĩgetha tuthiĩ he Kariuki ndona rĩu ũrũgamĩrĩri wa kĩrĩa nĩ wĩcemba harĩa ndona nginya mũmbunge wanyu harĩa kamĩtĩ-inĩ ya finance ndona
chairman wa finance
na ndona nginya chairman wa budget hau ndona Junet harĩa na Osoro makĩthakario rĩ na ithuĩ tũkorwo tũgĩnikia mwena ũyũ Kim. Pending bills cirĩhagĩrwo mwena ũrĩkũ tondũ nĩ nyingĩ ta gĩtarũnĩrwo?
Nĩ gũkoretwo na effort cia kũrĩha pending bill through kĩndũ mareta securitization. Securitization kana collateralization rĩ no ĩrĩa tũthiaga kuoya rũni bengi wĩragwo tũhe collateral ũgagĩũka na karogbook gaku kana ũgoka na gataito gaku. Pending bills thirikari nĩ ĩkoretwo and I thank Honorable Ndindi Nyoro tondũ nĩ akoretwo very outspoken on this issue ya the pending bills citiagĩrĩirwo gũtũra ci mũrigo. Thirikari no ĩke kĩndũ gĩtagwo collateralization kana securitization but I insist we must do it right because if we don't then tũgwĩkora na thĩna mũnene kũrĩa tũrĩ naguo tondũ collateralization ya pending bills mwena wa thirikari ĩthondeka kĩndũ gĩtagwo special purpose vehicle SPV igakorwo ina asset cingĩguard against mbeca ici cia pending bills magacoka o magafloat bonds na treasury bills mbeca icio ũrĩa iragũrwo tondũ rĩu nĩ tondũ marakombera thirikari ĩrĩhe mbeca kũrĩ suppliers na contractors mbeca icio ũrĩa iroka igathiĩ ikĩheagwo andũ arĩkũ aya maũĩtwo nĩ thirikari. Thirikari nĩ ĩkoretwo na kuga magĩe na leverage ya mbeca cia pensions funds kuma kũrĩ retirement benefit funds iria ciothe ciĩkuo by the way cina ũtonga wa around 4 trillion. NSSF wĩwika ĩna ũtonga wa 400 billion cituranĩrwo na insurance funds morani atĩrĩrĩ nĩ kũrĩ ũndũ cingĩ invest ta waki wa bara teno wa Naikuru na Ndũĩ kana kũrĩha pending bills but then thĩna nĩ atĩ ta rĩu ũngĩrora express highway they reported nĩ maramekire loss Ugicoka uge through securitization kana through leveraging ni mukuwa mbeca cia andũ NSSF mugakena cio bara na ikuru ri uramera mbeca cio wastwara kundu iteguthondeka profit which again ni mbeca cio korwo gicina kuguo it's a good idea but then ni idea agirirwo kurorwo from all angles ndigakorwo ni guthukia kuri kwageria.
Okay, thank you. Ndira turikie tondu rona kahira gatari coho tugukorwo tugikiambiriria giikaro giki koguo tuthi tuinekireirie Kariuki iguru rigie ni atia iteritana riaku rigikorwo ririku gwi thirikari tugithoma budget ya bururi umuthi na tugithi na mbere na mihuthirire ya mbeca ici tuguthoma umuthi.
Thank you. Urigenda kuga ni ati nigetha tukorwo twina ihinda ihuthu ria gukorwo ati Wanjiku ni arakinyirwo ni effect ya a good budget. Ni turabatara wa mbere thirikari ithondeke an enabling environment ya private sector. Okorwo ni agriculture, okorwo ni health, okorwo ni investors, makorwo mena uhuthu wa co-invest na uhuthu wa co-invest urehagwo ni support structure ya thirikari. Iri ati okorwo ni horo wa igoti riu twagweta ritirahinyiriria investor uria muno nginya akona mbeca ciake ndehota. Tariu ni twerwo horo wa kambuni ihingite itanahota gukorwo ikiripoti income tax mwaka uyu na ni kambuni cia kiro 400 na uguo ni kuga ati kambuni icio cingithie na mbere kuheo support ne thirikari ciko cina support structure ya thirikari undu ati ni marahota cooperate freely na guthondeka profit ciao then ni tugukorwo tugikinyukia ikinya. Undu ucio ngi ni prioritization. Mbeca ni turamenya ni macitiraigana iria ci budget-ini no ni ci prioritizwo na cigandwo tondu kwina prioritization mbeca ni ciekirwo haria hagereire na cicoke cirumirirwo cituike okorwo ni cherry fund-ire ne akinyira Wanjiku uria urari target wa gukinyirwo ni mbeca icio.
Kim tukinekireria tondu ndrona riu haha bandi riu rikuigirio aingirio kuria thini wa chemba nigetha tukimenya ni atia tane tuinekirerie.
So kindu kiria tukuga ni ati no wega kuhe Kenyan hope na tukimera ringi maundu ni mekwagira but from the way looks, from the way maundu mahana ndirona ngurani ya mwaka uyu no ria turorete.
What do you mean?
No, on a serious note, tado my own eye darora budget ino ri hana na mwaka uyu uri ukoretwo hana we are going back to digging the hole as opposed to asking whether we should stop niguo turie tukuma atia tando ko invade in financial institutions itu na gucira itukombere bilioni 600 from an economy that is doing this badly. Turamera mbeca iria mangiheire mundu kwendaga kuya karoni akagure kamugunda arihage okahora metigire kuguo i sector nyingi cigukorwo na lag nene. Hindi ria turona kambuni makiria ma 500 ma 40 cikiuma record-ini cia kuriha pension meaning ni kuhinga kana ni guthama ithamite that is not going to improve. Tugukorwo na mathina ma employers na nirona makiuga finance bill ino by the way uri erekire rehereirie nguri mukenya wa kawaida niguo ndagacoke bara iracikuithia ciothe the corporate sector.
Na no makuete murigo.
The danger with that ni the corporate sector no the finance service industry ira kwa murigo munene ri niyo employer ya 52% ya populations afururi. Aya industry no ya manufacturing ri industry sector ria kuita manufacturing na construction ri o ira kwa murigo uyu ri noyo yandikite 16% ya andikwa bururi. Girigaca ria ngwirire linkage na iria ingi separated heagwo around that 3%. Na niyo waigua ningi farm inputs na fertilizer turaciruta zero rated tucitware tax exempt. Meaning fertilizer iri na mbere kuongerereka na gina farm inputs na dawa cia urimi na andu iri ciahota kwika ate kuongereka mbeca in the process. koguo then twacoka haria tuga atiriri niguo andu matigacoke street-inĩ tumakenie tumere ihi ona tutinamuongerera ona ki no industry ici tureciria ati nicio cia big boy industry na nicio ikuite aya matanathie street-inĩ ni twaciongerera ki murigo koguo no guthiwa iguthie na mbere guthiwa at the end of the day tukwaga andu street-inĩ no andu makorwo mari o ahotu uria mahutite yes
you know tondu ti guthondeka twathondeka taru tungimurikorwo cost of production ndreciria mwena ucio ni wagirwo kumurekwo muno ni tondu uhoro igi iganda ugo turoiga uhoro igi taru hindi moku uhoro igi urimi hindi irio cia ng'ombe guhota ku afford ni guhota kurithia ng'ombe igire ithatu ni guhota kwandika mundu umwe kanere oko ni irio cia guku hindi ndahota gucigura ni ngurithia tuguku tuigana ona ni ngura you know focus itu ni turamitwara uhoro igi rucio kana ni kunina turanina rucio
oria tugire gugwetete hau kabere ni atiri ungirora ihinda ria hau teneri kwari na ataramu ingi muno akuma thirikari mavetinary na andu angirigasha ma supportaga sector eno na gukorwo makidirect sector eno ati ona kwanyu gwiciria hau gicagi no wamenya kwina veterinary umwe wa thirikari hau na kwina andu a ministry ya ngirigasha ona tha ici mari okuo no oguo turathi tucirinkite budget iria ra support structure icio ri noguo marathie magikoragwo ati matirahota gukorwo magiserve murimi uria wa kawaida ohoro wegie ko improve kana gukura kwandandura urimi uria wake nigetha akorwo kehota go produce muno oho ohoro wa change ya kuma zero rated to exempt kau ni kaundu ge guthie directly into cost of production ya murimi uria haria na oho no turabatara ku enhance support structures cia kuruta indo icio murimi uyu agetha kuma mugunda okorwo ni iria riake okorwo ni waru yake igithie thoko tutire na facilitation ihinda riri njiganu ya ku guarantee murimi uria ati athie thoko ni akuhota gukorwo agicokia mbeca ciake na hote gukorwo agicoka gukorwo na mbeca cia ko invest back gucoka haria mugunda kana kugura ng'ombe ingi
kimutukinyikiriria nigetha bandi akorwo ingira kuria ndigutauga energy na tubeca twega we
energy na infrastructure na ICT
thitima ndui ikiri mwena ucio kana itie kwa energy
me hamwe manyitanitio maretatwo na mahetwo 588 billion yes cost of production ni undu wa thitima waki wa mabara na gukuria kwa ICT connections in the nation
tondu tirimwe kana meri njiguite nginya iganda ici magi complain uhoro wigie gucokia the cost of production
by the way gutwikaga tunkono tuhote kuikurukia bei ya thitima ituri tungisave industries nyingi muno tariu ithe cia kwanyu ri cikirie kunina mititu icagi-ini tondu ciacokire ngũ-inĩ nĩ ũndũ thitima nĩ ciatwĩkire too expensive tene boiler ciacio cioparetagwo na thitima but it became unbearable nikio rathie githii o athie githii ugakora kina githaku kia ngũ kiubetie hangi no rokuria kiraihu ta mukwa wa ngũ tondu marageria kugeria kunyihia cost of production now the problem to now imwe ni cost of electricity it's very high ati no nginya twicirie twita bururi Kariuki ni uga atiriri bururi ukuraga ni undu wa kuhe iganda na industry sector ya bururi a good environment to thrive in tugaga atiriri kaingi thirikari ndiri na business kuingirira private sector kana kugeria ku offer private sector services tondu thirikari ndiri na indo twitaga core competencies thirikari nä rä na too much political patronage ate twandikaga andu ni undu wi murata wakwa as opposed it is more of aristocracy as opposed to meritocracy ni kuga atiriri twakuhe wira maina ni undu you are best suited kuruta wira uriku riria tweka mahitia ma thirikari ku invade private sector gurona egika ati koya waki wa nyumba na ndiri na core competences cia corporate world aria mekaga uguo ati wikarite thi na ataramu magagwikira austerity measures na cost benefit analysis ciothe magakwira reke twike u niguo tuhote kuheana nyumba ici at this price na tuthondeke profit then tugaga thirikari is 30% owner of every business that is making profit. Tado nĩ moyaga corporate tax at 30%. Kugu biashara yothe ĩrathũkũma Kenya, thirikari nĩ yonete biashara yo 30%. It has no business whatsoever gũcoka kũingĩrĩra corporate gũcindana na kũndũ yonete 30%. Yagĩrĩirwo gũtigĩrĩra andũ aya nĩ maheo very good environment ya gũthrive. Tado corporate industry nĩyo mover, ndakwĩra service industry peke yake employed 52% of Kenya population. Aggregation no employed 40, quite a number of it, onogoro ni 20%, it is in the hands of corporates. Kugu kono iheo enabling environment ati no ihote kuruta biashara ciayo sector ici ciothe cia Kenya, thirikari pull back ihotithie private sector go thrive, we could be doing better.
You know, atire Kariuki, tumurike horo bigie fertilizer. Todo to mwaka no gokire muthiru kuma hindi atugane twenderio fertilizer ngaya mai mafunda. You see, ndona twina billion cigana inyanya haha cia fertilizer. So far tuthiete ri ni atia kogirwo kurugiko na billion ta ici inyanya ri. Ni atia tungicihuthira na maundu maya ma fertilizer tutigirire ati ni twagacirithia system wega o ati mundu othe nginya mu biashara already ri. Is it possible to empower kana I enjoy the benefits ya besa ici nigetha gutigirire murimi onathia hau fara no ne fertilizer iyo itari yago?
Rekegerera gacira gaka o Kimani akorwa gweta na ningugwetete hau kabere uhoro ati thirikari nĩ ĩrabatara ikorwo ĩgĩcreate an enabling environment ya private sector kũruta wĩra. Tukirora uhoro wa fertilizer rĩ, thirikari gũtarĩ na subsidy ya fertilizer na thirikari ĩtaingĩrĩire, mũrĩmi nĩ ahotaga gũkorwo access fertilizer na access fertilizer na bei igũrũ. No thirikari yagĩrĩire gũka kũhũthĩria mũrĩmi mũrigo wa bei ĩno ya fertilizer tondũ nĩ ĩrakorwo ĩrĩ igũrũ mũno. No oho thirikari nĩ yagĩrĩire gwĩkĩra mĩtaratara ya kwaga kũraga sector iria ci njĩra-inĩ ĩyo. Harĩ na mũndũ ũcio wĩna agrovet hau mũciĩ na wĩra wake nĩ gũkĩra agathiĩ agrovet kwendia fertilizer enderie mũrĩmi ũrĩa ũkoroka harĩa. Hĩndĩ ĩrĩa thirikari yahingũra nduka yake haha kandore, mũrĩmi mũndũ ũrĩa mwendia wa agrovet no ethie kaũndũ kage angĩkorwo agĩka nĩgetha akorwo ahote kũigĩrĩra mũtu metha-inĩ. Na nĩho tũrauga thirikari nĩ ĩrabatara gũkorwo ĩgĩconsult again tuhũthĩre ũhoro ũguo wa gũthondeka irio ici ciarĩgire kũrĩo nĩ ngui. Tũgũkorwo tũgĩconsult the sector nĩgetha o mũndũ wothe okorwo nĩ distributor fertilizer kana manufacturer magakorwo informed nĩgetha tũtigatuĩke atĩ twarehe fertilizer twa import fertilizer kuma kũrĩa twauma yoka yoraga local industry. Yoka yoraga mũrĩmi ũcio mũnini wa ũrarĩhaga igoti na kwendia nduka yake hau mwisho wa mwaka akarĩha the corporate tax yake ya koretwo akĩrutĩra wĩra.
Tukirora kindu ta mbembe ri ta mũtu ri ũragĩa goro nĩkĩ na kũrarĩ na fertilizer ya subsidy?
Wa mbere nĩ nyambire ndauga atĩ onokorwo nĩ tũrarehe fertilizer ya subsidy, andũ arĩa marakorwo magĩkorana na fertilizer ĩno ya subsidy wa mbere ti andũ othe, na wa kerĩ fertilizer nĩ input ĩmwe thĩinĩ wa production ya mbembe kana thĩinĩ wa production ya mũmera ũcio. No oho kwĩna input ingĩ nyingĩ ciratuĩka impacted na njĩra tofauti. Kwa mũhano tũngĩhe andũ fertilizer Kenya na nĩ tugire 78% of Kenyans mararira na mbura gũkorwo magĩkũria ũrĩmi wao, gũcoke gũtuĩke mwaka ũcio gũtinaura mbura ĩrĩa yagĩrĩire na mũrĩmi nĩ ekĩrire fertilizer ĩyo mũgũnda, tũtigũtarajia maciaro marĩa mekuma mĩgũnda ĩyo nĩ maciaro mangĩhota gũcukithia bei ya irio thĩinĩ wa bũrũri ũcio. Koguo no nginya tũkorwo tũkĩrora maũndũ maya broadly, gwakorwo atĩ tũtina focus na sector ya fertilizer na twarehe fertilizer twanengera arĩmi. Kuma hau rĩ nĩ kaũndũ karĩkũ kangĩtũreka kũhotithia mũrĩmi ũyũ akorwo tũmũnyite guoko akorwo agĩproduce all the way nginya harĩa mũico. Na hau noho tugire atĩrĩrĩ, mbeca ici ciarokĩtwo rĩ nĩ ciganĩte gũkorwo cikĩrĩha mũtaaramu wa gũthiũrũrũka gũkũ kũmwĩra ona kagunyo gaka nĩ karũma irio ciaku. Koguo tugacoka haria support system-ini thirikari niyo ina structure na niyo ina mbeca cia gukorwo cigi support the private sector na gukorwo cigi support ona murimi ucio munini nigetha tuone murimi uyu end to end kuma kiambiriria nginya mwisho wake.
Kim nä ihutanetie ndeto ä rä ndenda gå kå ria nä ihutanetie na budget warora gicicio kä rä arä nä andå mebara andå arä matirä wä ra Kimani warora hau around rä nduka icio nä hinge gå tirä wä ra å rarutä ka bå rå ri no å kå rä o
å gwati å rä a twendagwo å må thä maina nä rä rä nä gå korwo na tarä u atongoria matarä na kä harä ro ka nä kä o kiugo kä ega in fact ndigwä ciona kä o kä u nä kä ritå inabe atä ta wä å ria atä rä rä kä rä a gä tå mä re anake aya maumä re bara rä anake aya maumä rire bara nä å ndå wa å mwe wao å roragä rwo na wathoma ng'ano icio magatheti-inä na kå rä a kå ngä å kona nä må ndå wä ho å raugire ici kwä gå tha gä thå ri nä må kå menya nä yo ndå ngä andä ka ndeto ciakwa njå ru na no wä å ria atä rä rä må ndå å yå rä how do you occupy office ya public no coke ndå ngä hota maina atä tå tingä hota gå gå criticize na ndwage gå tå raga na wä kä te å guo bado no å renda wä ikare office ya thirikari å tå nyerekagie nao å ngä rwa kaå ndå kau rä å ge atä nä ko karekä ka bå rå ri wothe atä tå ronire må mbunge å mwe athiä te kå nyerekia andå by the way na matinamenya makä rwo nä empowerment atä aragå ri indo cia mirioni 45 gä cagi kä mwe gä kaheo ithäi ta gä baå rä u andå othe magä tuä ka mena ithäi rä how are you even empowering those people å ngä heana cerahani 30 gä cagi kä mwe rä andå othe to må ndå agä tumagä re tå kuo twake
o må ndå nä bundi
å ngä kä oya tå riko twa chips å coke å heane constituency ĩmwe tå riko 300 rĩ karä andå igana mekwendia chips na nä igana megå cigå no må ndå acoke atwä re atä rä na nä må mbunge atä angä korwo må reciria mbeca ici nä nyingä mwagerirwo må thi må rore kaunti yakwa ĩna mbia cigana atä na njä ra nguhä aroka kå mwä ra mbeca cianyu iria njiä te må tingä hota gå tara
nä nyingä må no
angĩkorwo må reciria ici nä mbeca ndamå rehera mwagerirwo må thiä tu morie bengi ndä na mbia cigana na må mbunge må cara wake nä 700,000 arä he må ngä nji na mbeca iria ingä ciothe må ndå å cio ndainå kagia 100,000 no å yå waheane mirioni 45 noke kwä ganä ra andå mbeca iria nacio nao arä angä maume hau mathiä central magatå he kiro ya mboco kiro ya må cere na kamå tu karä a kanini ga chapo na tå mainä re ta andå mahana ngai nyinyi nä å rä a moka gå tå teithia na mamä te empowerment program na acio nä o andå arä a twä nao atä macokanä rä ire hau å guo maikare å rä a megå kå ria bå rå ri rä u nä å rona kä rä a kä ratå ma uchumi å hana å rä a å hana no economy hana å guo ä hana rä andå aya nä o maratwarithia ngari wonage må ndå rå me å guo arakinya ngabara na ngari ya mirioni 30 må ndå me wa må cara wa 100,000 atinä tio mahå thä ro maya mangä no bara ena ngari ya mirioni gä baå na kuna coke igue må ndå å yå rä no roka gå kwä ra mirioni 45 ti mbeca harä niä right nä kä å raigua mbeca iria irora o sector wathikä rä ria mbeca iria irora through corruption å ngä cituranä ra ũkona kona tå hote kå nyihia corruption na tå gä e na atongoria mena wendo na kå menya atä moete kanya kau mateithie bå rå ri ti meteithie tä rä tuga president Kibaki nä kå rä å ndå å mwe wa bata må ndå ekire wa mbere atå heire kä ndå gä tagwo balanced budget akarora tå rahota gå thå kå ma mbeca cigana nä guo tå menye tå kå hå thä ra cigana no ti tå kå hå thä ra cigana nä guo tå yå rie tå rathå kå ma cigana you balance the two na nä kä o mä aka yake 10 akombire 1.9 trillion only uguo nä average ya bilioni 190 o mwaka koguo deficit yake o mwaka yakoragwo ya around 190 only koguo ru niguo nake okire akeri tungiri na thiri utarakinyete trillion 4 thaici twina 11.4 trillion 70% ya our GDP nä thirä na njira nguhi tungiuga Kenya tumiendie tugayane ri tungimiendia ri tungitigwo na 30% tungiriha mathiri 70% yo tonga witu wothe ta bururi ungithie kuriha mathiri 30% in other words Kenya is insolvent twakwi gukinya handu tuge Kenya tungimiunanira muhuko mundu angeinuka na kuriha more of it. Now that's the problem we have. Na the no munene tunaguo because of the mindset of the leaders. Atongoria maugite o mekwenda gwikuria wene. Niguo mundu okagithurano gikingi uiguage mubunge arahuthirie milioni igana gwetha giti kena mushara collectively itakinyite ona ungitara muno ona dikinyite milioni 10 mushara uria arona. Arihite mataxi na ndui yet mundu ucio arahuthira 100 million gwetha giti. And that's why turera ngina andu itu mabe mamenye tongoria ni reflection ya bururi by the way. Mundu ndangiukaga ati akinya haha gwetha giti ati ngelandi uguo moro ndathie gwetha giti moro muroria ndoka naki. Ugi wakwa wothe ndinaguo mutikwenda ukamuteithie murenda kunjuria we na mbia cigana. Mugage oni angirebangite wega atanoka. Mukaga gucagura atongoria aria mangimuteithia mugathi gucagura atongoria aria meguthi kumuiya. Na mucoke mwicirie maundu ni magacenjia mweta bururi
ndona maundu ta maranyitana kimani guku ni Nairobi mwina Kariuki ndona macina ngari cine ngari igire irahia na guku ni mucii munene wa Nairobi na ni wakiona mbeu njithi koguo ni tao magitabania giko giki ithe ndugukimona hau makenererukite muno makiria na ngwiciria ni okay uyu ni uthukangia Kim
ni kuri mundu ugire ni turiaga gia kuria turi atongoria itu na mageciria na ithero
o niguo maundu maikarite muci wa Nairobi na uguo ni gukiuga toguo turoiga budget igithomwo ni ati no twage maundu maingi agikorwo bururi ukorwo hano andu no mage maundu maingi muno ma kwirahira ni tondu ni kuga kwina sector nyingi muno cihingite mirango umuthi matuka maingi matiraruta tondu ikorwo bica ino ona aria matagikinyirirwo ni ndeto ino ngwiciria makwihete hinya wa kuruta wira no kuhinga makorwo magikiinuka no tugicoka riu gitumi kia ndeto ino ni ati ekorwo Kevin ari moyo umuthi Ojwang neti ndeto ino rigi tutingia korwo tukimiona na nwiga both sides tuko twina wigiririki arurugani magena wigiririki na tondu gakari gakano ka mundu no kone kimani ukuire runi agura gakari na tukorwo tukire na limit oria turagika maundu na nigetha tutigagite tugikionoria no ngwiciria uhoro igi corruption toguo kimani kuhutagia mundu gitoka Kariuki ni ati ni ucio niguo nduria uthukitie bururi muno makiri to twina budget ya trillion 4 gaturumo wagana 4 ino kuratuika na andu marona mbeca nyingi hau ta cigukorwo igithie corruption oria budget iri nene noguo gitweku kia wici gukorwo gikinene
heno gwati kwa jawaba warora haria tuthiite turorete mwaka wa tutire haraihu na githurano mehariririe ma githurano gutwikinya mwaka uyu ungi megukorwo mambiriirie kuri andu aingi na kuri nginya mambitie nginya ihinda-ini riri na no ke gugakorwo na guoya tondu angikorwo ona hau previous rena tuiguite nginya atongoria makigeria ku estimate mbeca iria citurate twita bururi through corruption in a day ne makiria ma billion 2 o muthenya ri na warora sector iria ciaroketitwo mbeca kana ciaroketitwo mbeca cia kuigana ugakora sector nyingi ona citire na uigiririki wa kuga ati auditor general aigira mabuku-ini ugakora o hindi ni araruta report ya mbeca ciramenyaga kuria ciathire iyo gukora no korwo tutire na uma wa corruption ihanikite kiwango kiriku ni ukorora ko ni report ya auditor general igakwira ikorwo ni ahota gupiki giki na giki iria cirahotete gukunikanio undu citanoneka ciikuria thiini na oho no tureyonera na county government ciagirire gukorwo cigituteithia guikurukia mbeca kuria thi no nacio ciahanite cia create another layer ya corruption na kuhuthira mbeca ici budget-ini andike urakora otoguo Kimani uga haha MCA owe mushara wake ni mbia cigana ugakora ni athondeka ni arehe milioni kibao hamwe na acitumira gwika campaign yake nigetha heo giti kia MCA o uria uwi mushara wake ungicokaniririe miaka 5 egukorwo athurite itigukinya milioni icio kibao acokaniririe twakorwo we are not an honest country na our atongoria aitũ individual matirĩ na ũigĩrĩrĩki wa gũkorwo magĩtongoria mũingĩ, mareiga mbere, mambe marĩe ciao, mambe macokie kĩrĩa mahũthĩra, tũcoke ithuĩ tũbangwo na o mĩario ĩtarĩ na umithio wa kĩrĩa tũrabatara gũkorwo tũkĩona kana services iria tũrabatara gũkorwo tũkĩona.
Kim, ndĩrenda twĩtũinĩ kĩrĩirie ũguo, nĩ ndĩramenya Badi thaa ici mbunge, nĩ ndona mbica ĩmwe ya mbunge Junet agĩkĩaria nĩ mũnini wa arĩa aingĩ, okorwo ndirahĩtia. You see, Kim, ngwenda tumũrĩke mbica ĩno tondũ onawe ũrĩ o mũtongoria na kuma kũrĩa Moro na bũrũri ũyũ witũ wa Kenya. Mathugũta maya na marũrũ maya tũkĩithania na corruption ĩyo tũraria haha na Kariuki nĩ atĩ ũmũthĩ gĩikaro kĩa mbunge kĩkwaragĩrĩria ũhoro wĩgiĩ gĩkuũ gĩa Ojwang, na gũkoneka gũtirĩ na ũma. Nĩ ũraigua nginya CCTV camera itironeka, kĩrĩa kĩrathiĩ na mbere gũtirĩ mũndũ ũngĩmenya, na nĩ tũrakĩrĩtwo nginya nĩ ahetwo nga nĩ cai kanĩkĩa nĩ soda aragũragĩrwo,
soda na roko
agũrĩrwo soda na roko rĩ, ũrĩa gwakinya nĩ rĩbigwo athire na mbere gũtirĩ mũndũ ũngĩona. No ndeto yothe ĩgĩthiĩ na mbere rĩ, ũrũgamĩrĩri wothe wa bũrũri nginya mũndũ ũrĩa tũratuĩka ũgiria anyitwo rĩ, arĩ oro hau, nĩ gũkinyĩte handũ ngatongoria nĩ kwegekia maregekia mũingĩ ũrĩa thaa ici Kim ũkinyĩte mũico na nĩ ũhũtĩte biũ, ũrarigwo kũrora nako.
In fact ona gũtuĩkire ndarathiĩ kũndũ, angĩkorwo nĩ agathiĩ kũndũ agathiĩ na ipo wa kugathiĩ. Na Minister wa Internal Security by the way araugire atĩ andũ arĩa marizainaga nĩ kũremwo wĩra nĩ andũ arĩa weak.
Okay, andũ arĩa marizainaga nĩ kũremwo kũruta.
Andũ arĩa rirwa resign arauga kũ resign nĩ weakness. Na ũguo nĩ kuga strength nĩ kũnyerekia Kenyans ũremetwo nĩ wĩra waku, no we ta ndũrĩ mũndũrũme wa gũikaikio ndũngĩ resign. Njugaga atĩrĩrĩ, na ndiĩ na ũru na president, thamaki yatua gũbuthabuthaga na mũtwe nĩguo twĩragwo. Maũndũ maya mothe wamona ona tiga gũtinda ũgĩetha kũrĩa weakness ĩrĩ. Weakness ona ndĩrĩ kũrĩ mũthigari ũrarega kũ resign. Weakness ĩrĩ kũrĩ mũndũ ũrĩa woire rũhiũ akĩamba akĩoya Biblia akĩhĩta, agĩcoka akĩoya katiba akĩmĩoya igũrũ na akiuga nĩ arĩ defendaga katiba ĩyo na arĩ defendaga na rũhiũ tihwa. Agĩcoka akĩheo rũhiũ akĩoya igũrũ, na nowe mũndũ wĩ wika Kenya ũheagwo rũhiũ rwa kũgitĩra Kenyans kũrĩ andũ arĩa oru mangĩenda kũmekĩra maũru. Mũndũ ũmwe wa andũ arĩa oru mekĩire Kenya maũru nĩ mũnene wake ũmwe wa thigari. Tondũ no ngoro tu ũrekire ũguo rĩ, maũndũ marorwo rĩ, kwĩna uwezekano mũnene andũ arĩa marekire ũguo marekaga ũguo mamũkenie kana either no kũmerĩte meke guo. Wewe mũnene ũrĩa waheirwo hinya na ũhoti wa gũ-protect bũrũri, ũkirĩte andũ aku magĩkĩka maũndũ ta maya. Acio nĩ andũ erĩ macinĩrwo ngari by the way. Mũndũ ũrarĩ na gakari gake either nĩko arekuaga agĩthiĩ wĩra kana nĩko wĩra wake tondũ nĩko gakuaga mĩrigo yake. Igĩrĩ nĩ ciĩkate. Aya nĩ anake mangĩtindire handũ mũndũ agethera mũka na matinda gũkũ magĩkate. Rithathi ici irahũthĩka itingĩhũthĩkire, tear gas canister ici ũrona nĩ indo cio nĩ ũtonga wa bũrũri ũtangĩhũthĩkire ũmũthĩ. Mathaa maya thirikari yatinda haha ĩkĩhĩtana na andũ aya ĩngĩ gwĩkaga ũndũ ũngĩ. Nĩ kũrĩ andũ acio ũrona ngĩrĩrĩba-inĩ biacara icio ciothe ciĩhinge, o mũndũ nĩ angĩinũkĩria gwake kanyamũ karĩa atindaga agĩthũkũma. Nĩ kũrĩ andũ arĩa mandĩkĩtwo kũu na mekũrokaga wĩra marute matinaroka. Ũngĩrora trickle down effect ya mũndũ ũmwe mwaganu ũrĩa ĩkoragwo ĩnene rĩ, you can tell ĩkosaga economic loss ya billions economy. Then twĩna president wĩna ũma wa ũrĩa kũrathire na mbere tondũ president nĩ aheagwo briefs nĩ NIS on daily basis. Koguo ithuĩ no tũtinde guess work nĩkĩ gĩekĩkire, but president does not guess work. Tondũ president aheagwo factual information ya nĩ atĩa gwĩkĩkire. Koguo kĩũria kĩu kũria tu needs boss ndeto icio irathire atĩa ena a full report yo nĩguo kũrahanĩkire mũnene. Ona tuga nĩ ũndũ wa goodwill wĩraga mũndũ wamba wĩikare kando, ndikwenda gũtangatha nĩ wa resign. ugana wamba kwehera uchunguzi wiko ungigakorwo
Tondũ nĩ ũrahutio mũno.
Onogo no mũratagwo na ndũkwenda kũmwĩka maũndũ manene ngina kanjo ũyũ ũroka gũtũhenia atĩ anga mwana nĩ kwĩhũrithia arehũrithirie rĩ na ng'ano nyingĩ just tell them to resign bũrũri ũthigari itagĩrĩcia andũ 5 kana 12 tarutwa Jesu. There are so many people mangĩamba kuoya iturwa ciao cicokie kĩndũ gĩtagwo public trust atĩ wĩta president nĩ kũrĩ ũndũ ũreka. Then umirona ukire Kenyans atiriri I'll leave no stone unturned kirisha iria tukiheanaga gutigirira justice ni ekote
ya sawa
na to uyu by the way ni kuri angi fishermen na guku 30 maroragirwo ona ni kuri senator ngona akiuria kai mono mwe kare wa important kuri athate maroragirwo tandu bururi wothe wa kate. But the difference is haha ni turona ni mundu umwe wi guthire githuri nauga amo Kenyan than other Kenyans. Na nĩ kĩrona ũndũ attractĩte pain nyingĩ kũrĩa acio marakwĩrire rĩngĩ moko-inĩ ma itoi kana maũndũ-inĩ mangĩ. Tũtingĩhanania actions cia itoi na actions cia mũndũ ũrĩa wehĩtire atĩ nĩ protect actions nĩ protect mũtũrĩre wa Kenyans ũtuĩkĩte na ũreka atĩa. But then by and large maũndũ maya wona magĩkĩka maratũcokia thutha makinya maingĩ mũno ta economy both makinya marĩa tũkinyĩte kuma watho wa kũigio terwo Moi kuma 1992 gũka nginya harĩa tũkinyĩte tũkinyĩte makinya maingĩ mũno gũcoka na thutha kũrĩa twarĩ. At least President Kibaki na President Kenyatta nĩ mageririe gũtũkinyũkithia makinya o kahora ma kweherera maũndũ ta maya. Ona ngoro nĩ tweragwo nĩ kũrĩ andũ makoragwo Yala River rĩ nĩ faceless people tũtoĩ oiguaga andũ makiuga mũndũ witũ umire mũciangari turacokire kũigua Yala tondũ rĩngĩ na ndikwenda mũndũ rĩngĩ mũndũ wakuire na magĩciragia arĩ mwega kana arĩ mũũru rĩ tũtiguaga andũ anga mũndũ macokanĩirie na mũthigari akorwo River Yala. Rĩngĩ ici nĩ itoi imwe nyingĩ acio nĩ itoi iria cikuruhanire na DCI tondũ ona no gũkĩrĩ rogue officers makĩũraga mathiĩ gũte. But maũndũ marĩa tũrona na thirikari ĩno nĩ andũ ciana ciũĩkaine mwana umire mucioka na bendera na ngathi na ngacibũ na thimo acoke murathe ungi abduct ndarioneka mwana ungi wandikire ndeto social media onongoro no wega ne gukiagite hadafu gukiaria ndeto njuru cia munene no wega. But then kwi watho bururi wa uria ugite mwana ucio ri athitangirwo na defamation kana spread of false information which is a misdemeanor by law by the way na tihitia ni hitia rikuhiriirie civil ni hitia ria kwirwo ni jaji we ringi uthio tugute nyeki gwa civil na ringi ogorokire na bio kiri hoyo damages ucio horo wikete then tutingituika turiuraga ciana ni undu wa maundu ta macio then tukagia na ripple effect tena turona economy ya andu maumirire ku demand rights ciao then tugekora haria twari last year no menya by the way to June the same June tugekora haria twari andu marorunganite marorunganie na andu aria makuire na andu aria mari abducted kuratuika so far over 159 people died. Maundu mangi no nginya bururi move away from such things.
Karukita tondu njui tuguthie bunge anytime ta comment ka undu iguru rigie ndeto iyo irathi na mbere.
Wa mbere ngwĩciria nĩ ndeto ya kĩeha mũno especially kuona atĩ ũndũ ũyũ ũrekĩkire thĩinĩ wa ceceni ya borithi o kũrĩa tũĩ ona ihinda rĩrĩ ũngĩigua wĩ threatened we mwenyewe ũgũteng'era ceceni ya borithi ĩrĩa ĩ hakuhĩ nawe tondũ kũu nĩkuo ũraigua wĩ safe. Koguo nĩ ũndũ wa kĩeha mũno. Ona tukiugaga nĩ ma nĩ twagĩrĩire gũkorwo tũkĩgaidi Gen Z na andũ arĩa angĩ ũhoro wa behavior cia social media. Ũndũ ũcio ndũrawarantĩte gĩkuũ kĩa mũndũ gũkinyĩra gĩkuũ kĩa mũndũ na koguo na twarora harĩa tũrorete atĩ nĩ tũramenya nĩ mũndũ ũĩkaine nĩ mũndũ tũronire ũrĩa ekĩtwo nĩ ũndũ tũngiuga nĩ ũndũ wa kĩeha mũno na pole gwĩ family ĩyo.
Thank you. Nwega ndirenda tukinyie hau na nigetha tuthie bunge ya bururi tukeigue bandikĩrĩa uria akiharĩrĩirie kana maharĩrĩirie budget ya bururi na uria gukorwo igĩkĩgayo na ithuĩ no tũgũkorwo tũgĩthikĩrĩria na nĩgetha tũthiĩ na mbere na gũkũmenyithia ũrĩa ĩtariĩ na ũrĩa ĩgũkũhutia wĩ wanjikũ kana wĩ mwĩroreri witũ. Koguo tũgũkorwo tũgĩthiĩ kũrĩa thĩinĩ wa mbunge ya bũrũri kũrĩa minister wa kĩgĩna John Mbadi agũkorwo agĩgĩtarĩria ciĩgiĩ budget ĩno na ĩrĩa nĩyo nene mũno makĩria bũrũri wa Kenya so far, na tũigue ũrĩa mbeca igũkorwo igĩkĩgayo na tũigue ciĩgiĩ policies kana matacũkia marĩa akorirwo akĩĩranĩra atĩ ta thirikari nĩ magũtigĩrĩra nĩ makinyanĩrio na megũtũhutia atĩa. Ndũgathiĩ kũraihu, tũnyitanĩre na Mbadi.
And the Standing Order number 241 of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, these legal provisions give life to the building constitutional requirements of good governance to which the President and certainly the National Treasury and Economic Planning remain fully committed to. Mr. Speaker, at the outset, allow me to express my sincere gratitude to His Excellency, Honorable Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, for the trust he bestowed upon me by appointing me as the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning to provide leadership in economic and financial affairs of our country. I remain mindful of the aspirations and high expectations of the Kenyan people as I serve in this office. The Constitution protects realization of economic, social, and cultural rights, which includes the rights to adequate food, to adequate housing, to education, right to health, to social security, and to take part in cultural life, to water and sanitation, and also right to work. This budget, Mr. Speaker, speaks to these rights and reaffirms the priority policies and strategies aimed at stimulating economic recovery, articulated in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, otherwise known as BETTER, while highlighting the achievements over the past 2.5 years in enhancing the livelihoods of Kenyans. At its core, BETTER has adopted a value chain approach, focusing on strategic investment in areas that generate the highest impact, particularly in job creation and income generation at the grassroots level. Mr. Speaker, significant successes have been achieved through targeted intervention and structural reforms. These measures have laid a solid foundation for economic recovery and set us on a path towards long-term growth and stability. Mr. Speaker, let me mention just a few achievements under BETTER. First, the Kenyan economy has remained resilient and registered an average growth of 5.2% for the period between 2023 and 2024, outpacing both global growth of 3.3% and 3.8% for the sub-Saharan African region over the same period. Other macroeconomic fundamentals such as inflation and exchange rates have strongly rebounded and are projected to remain stable. Second, the government has rolled out fertilizer and seed subsidies to farmers across the country, and that has boosted production in key food value chains and revived underperforming or collapsed export crops such as pyrethrum. Since February 2024, Mr. Speaker, a total of 6.5 million registered farmers have benefited from the fertilizer subsidy program. And as a result of these initiatives, the cost of fertilizer has declined by 67% from Kenya shillings 7,500 in 2022 to 2,500 in 2025. While maize production has increased by 38.9% from 61.7 million bags in 2022 to 85.7 million bags in 2024. This is a clear demonstration of the positive impact of our agricultural reforms towards food security and improved household income. Third, to support livelihoods and small businesses, the government has disbursed loans amounting to over 75 billion by the end of May 2025 through the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund. This initiative has provided access to affordable credit to over 26 million customers with a strong base of 9 million repeat borrowers and a repayment rate of 79%. A total of 4.5 million borrowers are eligible to be graduated to the mainstream financing institutions. And to build a culture of savings for the future, the fund has also successfully mobilized 4.5 billion in savings from its beneficiaries. Fourth, to enhance the attainment of universal health coverage, the government has expanded social health insurance. And as of May 2025, more than 22 million Kenyans were registered with the Social Health Authority, what we call SHA, representing a remarkable 175% increase in membership compared to the 8 million previously enrolled under the defunct National Hospital Insurance Fund, NHIF. This marks a major milestone, Mr. Speaker, in our health sector reforms and brings us closer to our goal of equitable, affordable, and accessible health care for all. Fifth, in fulfillment of the commitment to deepen home ownership and close the housing gap, the government has facilitated the construction of affordable housing units across the country. Since September 2022, 2,379 affordable housing units have been completed across 4 counties, with another 11,000 units in the last stages of completion. The units have been advertised for sale to the public through the Boma Yangu platform. And in addition, there are 148,465 units under active construction across the remaining 43 counties. As part of the program, the government is also supporting the development of institutional housing for the uniformed services and students. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, these efforts have created over 250,000 direct and indirect jobs for Kenyans. In addition, over 11 billion has been ring-fenced for Juakali and MSMEs to support local fabrication of steel doors, windows, and other construction materials. Sixth, to drive digital transformation and inclusion, the government has expanded last-mile fiber optic connectivity to 13,590 kilometers in 2025, up from 8,900 kilometers in 2022, an increase of 53%. Two, established 285 digital hubs across the country, and also increased the number of digitized government services from 350 in 2022 to 20,985 in 2025 through integration with the e-citizen and mobile platforms, ensuring seamless access for all Kenyans. Seventh, to promote access to reliable and competitive energy, the government has expanded energy generation by installing an additional 167 megawatts of electricity from 3,076 megawatts in 2022 to 3,243 megawatts in 2025. This has enabled connection of 932,839 more customers to electricity. The system peak has increased from 2,149 megawatts of electricity in July 2022 to 2,316 megawatts of electricity in February 2025. The total number of customers connected to electricity has increased to 10 million in 2025 from 8.9 million in 2022. Eighth, to boost education and training outcomes in the country as a tool of creating equality in the society, the government has invested significant resources and implemented radical changes in the education sector, and these include resolving the uncertainty around the competency-based curriculum, CBC, launching of the Kenya Education Management Information System to consolidate all existing student registers from early childhood development to institutions of higher learning into a single centralized database. And three, rolling out of a new student-focused higher education focusing model with special emphasis for students from vulnerable families. Additionally, in order to improve the teacher-student ratio, the government has recruited 76,000 teachers, including junior secondary school teachers. Ninth, to enhance domestic and regional connectivity, boost rural productivity, improve urban informal settlements, and reduce urban congestion, this government has constructed an additional 1,574 kilometers of roads and 129 bridges from 2022 to April 30th, 2025. Further, the government has rehabilitated an additional 212 kilometers of roads and periodically maintains 126,177 kilometers of roads. 10th, the government has also made significant progress in expanding social protection through the Inua Jamii Cash Transfer Program. From 2022 to 2025, the number of households with orphans and vulnerable children receiving support has increased by 65% to 428,421. Additionally, persons living with disabilities registered for support grew by 34% to 59,637. The number of senior citizens aged 70 years and above registered for social protection also rose by 66% to over 1.2 million. These efforts have provided stable incomes to the beneficiaries and reduced their dependency on relatives, enhancing their dignity and quality of life. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, notwithstanding these achievements, we are aware that a lot remains to be done in order to address the pressing challenges facing Kenyans. And Mr. Speaker, in this year's budget-making process, we accorded Kenyans an opportunity to share their views on how to address the economic challenges facing our country. In my various engagements at open barasas and in the media, Kenyans have been very resolute in voicing their concerns that include overtaxation and high cost of living, unemployment, need for protection of the poor and vulnerable, and more importantly, the need to reduce government expenditure and wastage of resources across the national and county governments. Mr. Speaker, I am alive to these domestic challenges facing Kenyans and the external factors such as geopolitical tensions and shifting global trade dynamics that lead to escalation of the cost of essential commodities in the country, requiring comprehensive responses by government. As you may recall, the social unrest precipitated by the Finance Bill of 2024 brought to the fore the importance of values and principles of governance as enshrined in our Constitution. In response and to win public trust, we have strengthened public participation in all policy formulation, including budget-making process. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I have actively engaged Kenyans in various social forums in an effort to promote inclusive dialogue on the challenges facing our economy. And as a result of these consultations, we have focused on the following broad areas. First, easing tax burden on Kenyans by increasing the pool of taxpayers and enhancing tax compliance. In this respect, the ongoing work on the digitization and automation of the Kenya Revenue Authority, in line with the Kenya's medium-term revenue strategy. Thus, all who are able shall henceforth contribute to financing the operations of government and development of our country. Second, to enhance liquidity in the economy and support small businesses, we have started the process of settling pending bills that have been validated, particularly those related to road construction, which has resulted in resumption of road construction projects across the country. Mr. Speaker, the pending bills verification committee will share their final report by the end of June 2025. This report will be analyzed and recommendations tabled in Cabinet for approval, after which we shall embark on the process of clearing the eligible bills, starting with those related to individuals, businesses, and the micro, small, and medium enterprises, majority of whom have borne the brunt of non-payment. Third, promotion of good governance on public finance matters. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans have expressed concerns about the public debt. Indeed, there is a perception of lack of transparency in the management of public debt. In this regard, I requested the Auditor General to conduct a comprehensive audit of public debt. The report will be House. To be unrealistic. First, we are at the beginning used in the preparation of 2026 budget. This House 5. On unrealistic revenue projections, we have reduced revenue projection to be in line with the trends. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, revenue projections in the financial year 2025-26 budget and over the medium term are consistent with the growth of the economy. Fifth, Mr. Speaker, in order to improve governance in the process, I on April 7, 2025, and beginning of done through the without action. This will reduce the opaqueness estimated at 10% budgets. Sixth, we have efforts to enhance transparency and promote deepen public understanding of government economic priorities. We have not only intensified media engagement through the TV stations and radios, but have also engaged the public in open places like Jivanji Garden, Bunge la Mwananchi, and Mombasa County, where we held a meeting at Swahili Port Amphitheatre. Similar engagements have also taken place in other locations in Nairobi, Mombasa, Eldoret, and Nyeri, thereby providing valuable insights and lessons which have been taken into consideration while preparing this budget. Seventh, Mr. Speaker, in order to create additional jobs for the youth, the government has begun rolling out Climate Works, a nationwide program that will engage over 110,000 youth across all 47 counties. The program started last year in Nairobi's informal settlements and has been a great success. Now it is being expanded to the rest of the country. Climate Works is designed as a social support program that gives young people paid work to improve their communities. The youth will help build roads, plant trees, and clean up the environment in their neighborhoods. Thus, through this climate work, the government is not only providing a paycheck to help young people meet their immediate needs, but also offering financial support to help them develop themselves and their families. Indeed, the program enables them to save money and prepare for their next steps, including starting businesses, continuing their education, or finding long-term jobs. I encourage all our youth to register ahead of the registration deadline. Today, Mr. Speaker, having heard Kenyans loud and clear, we have accommodated their diverse concerns in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. And in this regard, this budget provides highlights of the measures the government has taken to stimulate economic recovery, strengthen macroeconomic stability, and enhance resilience of our economy. Mr. Speaker, achieving these strategic objectives will require that we pull in the same direction. It is in this context that His Excellency the President has urged us to put our differences aside, build bridges, and focus on implementation of strategic interventions for a better Kenya. Mr. Speaker, in this respect, the theme for this year's budget is stimulating sustainable economic recovery for improved livelihoods, job creation, and business and industrial prosperity in line with better. That is bottom-up economic transformation agenda. That is the theme. Mr. Speaker, as we move forward in the implementation of the government's agenda, we are also conscious of the fiscal constraints that demand our collective attention and thoughtful action. One, rising demands for increased public spending, which could lead to either higher debt or the need to raise taxes, both of which require careful consideration and balanced decision-making given current public concerns. Two, we face constraints on account of public debt accumulation. Progressively, our debt carrying capacity has narrowed. This calls for prudence and discipline on how we manage and take on new debt. And finally, we face the challenges of mobilizing higher tax revenues as we must balance the need for increased revenues with the need to keep the cost of doing business low to stimulate economic growth. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, these constraints are interlinked, and addressing them effectively requires strategic planning, fiscal discipline, and a commitment to long-term sustainability. In this regard, this budget will continue to implement a fiscal consolidation plan designed towards slowing down the growth of public debt while protecting service delivery to our citizens. Given the limited resources we have made tough choices by curtailing funding to lower priority areas. This has allowed us to redirect our scarce resources towards the better core pillars and enablers, accelerating outcomes for citizens while maintaining pro-poor spending in health, education, and vulnerable groups. Mr. Speaker, the rest of my statement will present the economic context around which this budget is prepared, policy priorities and structural reforms under better, the proposed resource allocations as well as revenue-raising measures that the government will implement in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. And therefore, let me start with economic policy context. And I will first speak to the global context. Mr. Speaker, 2025-2026 budget has been prepared in the context of heightened uncertainty due to recent tariff wars and the intensification of geopolitical tensions, which continue to pose significant risks to global economies. In this regard and respect, global economic growth is expected to slow from 3.3% in 2024 to 2.8% in 2025, and finally to 3% in 2026. Now, let me come to the domestic economy. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, on the domestic front, the economy has remained resilient, as I stated earlier, recording an average growth rate of 5.2% for the years 2023 and 2024. This performance is higher than the global average of 3.3% and also higher than the sub-Saharan African region average of 3.8% over the same period. This strong growth reflects the impact of sound and deliberate policies, as well as the resilience of our well-diversified economy. These factors have enabled us to withstand significant domestic and external shocks while maintaining a steady path of progress. In 2024, the economy grew by 4.7%, supported by positive growth in all sectors except construction and mining. This growth was lower compared to 5.7% in 2023, mainly due to adverse effects of floods in the second quarter and the anti-finance bill protests in the third quarter of 2024 that disrupted economic activities. In fact, our economy closed down for about 3 months. Mr. Speaker, the government's policy interventions have strengthened the macroeconomic indicators as reflected in the following achievements. Number one, inflation rates has declined to 3.8% in May 2025 from a peak of 9.6% in October 2022. The prices of essential food items, including sugar, milk, maize flour, wheat flour, bread, and rice, among others, have eased. For example, the price of 2 kilograms of sifted maize flour has declined to 156.9 shillings in May 2025 from Kenya shillings 177.7 in October 2022. Similarly, cost of energy and power has also come down over the same period. Second, in response to the decline in inflation, the Central Bank of Kenya has gradually eased monetary policy, lowering the central bank rate from 13% in August 2024 to 9.75% in June 2025. With the easing of monetary policy stance, interest rates have been declining. For example, the 91-day treasury bills rates have declined from an average of 15.9% in May 2024 to 8.3% by May 2025. In addition, the average commercial bank lending rates that peaked at 17.2% in November 2024 have since declined to 15.7% in April 2025 and are expected to decline further. This decline has not only reduced the cost on government debt, but is also expected to stimulate lending by banks to the private sector and support economic activity. And third, foreign exchange market has remained stable, supported by a narrowing in the current account deficit and improved investor sentiment and confidence in our economy. The current account deficit narrowed to an all-time low at 1.3% of GDP in 2024 from 2.5% of GDP in 2023, supported by export of goods, resilient tourism, and remittance inflows, and a contraction in food imports. As a result, our foreign exchange reserves have increased to their highest levels and stood at US dollars 10.5 billion, which is equivalent to 4.7 months of import cover by 30th of May 2025, and continue to provide adequate cover and a buffer against any short-term shocks in the foreign exchange market. The exchange rate against the US dollar has also appreciated from 159.7 to the dollar in January 2024 to stabilize at Kenya shillings 129.3 shillings to the dollar by 30th of May 2025. Mr. Speaker, the economy is expected to sustain growth momentum in 2025 and 2026, with the growth projected at 5.3% per year. And Mr. Speaker, this growth outlook is premised on a stable macroeconomic environment over the medium term. To foster macroeconomic stability, the government will continue to uphold prudent monetary and fiscal policies, ensuring that our actions remain aligned with the evolving needs of the economy and of the Kenyan people. As part of the process, the government will work to ensure that inflation remains within the targeted range, maintain a competitive exchange rate to the dollar, and deliver stable interest rates. Fiscal policy stance over the medium term will continue to support the government's priority programs under Better through a growth-oriented fiscal consolidation path. And as such, the fiscal deficit is projected to decline from 5.3% of GDP in the financial year 2023-24 to 2.7% of GDP in the financial year 2028-2029. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's economic outlook faces both external and domestic risks. Globally, trade tensions, financial market volatility, and geopolitical conflicts could reduce Kenya's exports, tourism, and remittances, as well as raise costs of essential commodities. In the domestic scene, extreme weather may impact agriculture, infrastructure, and food security. The government is monitoring these risks closely and will take necessary action and measures to safeguard macroeconomic stability. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, let me now expound on the policy, priorities, and structural reforms that the government is implementing to sustain economic growth and improve livelihood of Kenyans. The priorities are under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, as I have already affirmed earlier in my statement, government's initiatives under Better over the last 2.5 years have resulted in significant successes, notwithstanding a challenging domestic and external landscape. Over the medium term, the government will consolidate the gains already realized to stimulate sustainable economic recovery for improved livelihoods. Towards this end, the government will continue to implement policies, programs, projects, and the interventions geared towards 1. Bringing further down the cost of living, 2. Ensuring food security, 3. Creating jobs, 4. Expanding the tax base, 5. Improving foreign exchange balances, and finally, fostering inclusive growth. Priority will be given to attracting strategic investment across Better's 5 core pillars and their enablers, using a value chain approach to enhance production and add value and improve market access. This will be supported by a whole-of-government approach to service delivery. Mr. Speaker, the government will also implement the following interventions to support and accelerate economic recovery. First, continue to uphold macroeconomic stability and strengthen security to ensure a safe and supportive business environment. Second, accelerate the development of key infrastructure, including roads, railway, energy, and water systems to lower the cost of doing business and ease the movement of the people and goods. Third, boost investment in key economic sectors to drive broad-based sustainable growth by advancing agricultural transformation, strengthening manufacturing, promoting environmental conservation and climate change mitigation, revitalizing tourism, and ensuring sustainable land use and management. Fourth, strengthen human capital development by increasing investment in health, education, and targeted social safety nets for vulnerable populations to achieve both social and economic outcomes. Fifth, promote empowerment of youth, women, and persons living with disability through government-funded programs complemented by strategic partnerships with private sector organizations. Sixth, facilitate fiscal decentralization by allocating shareable revenues to governments and effectiveness in public service delivery. I want to now turn to a presentation on building resilience against climate change. Here, Mr. Speaker and honorable members, climate change, we all know, is now a global crisis and is vulnerable to the impacts of the climate, which pose both economic and fiscal risks. In response, the government is taking proactive steps to align with the global transition towards a low-carbon, climate-resilient future. Climate finance mobilization strategy, national policy framework on green fiscal incentives, carbon market framework, as well as the national green taxonomy. To diversify our financing sources, address budget deficits, and fund social and environmental sustainability projects, the government is developing a sustainability-linked bond framework that will allow the issuance. We reaffirm our dedication to protecting our environment, safeguarding livelihoods, and building a climate-resilient Kenya. Disruptions, at the same time affecting lives and livelihoods of millions of Kenyans. Financing framework to manage disaster is finalizing the development of the Public Finance Management Disaster Risk Management Fund regulations of 2025. The regulations seek to establish a dedicated fund for addressing 4 cycles of disaster risk management, namely preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. Allow me now to turn to policy and legal institutional reforms. Mr. Speaker, recognizing that sustainable economic recovery depends on the timely implementation of effective policy, legal, and institutional reforms, the government is implementing the following interventions to enhance the business environment, improve efficiency in public service delivery, and bolster accountability and transparency in the management of public finances. Number 1, public procurement reforms. Mr. Speaker, to streamline public procurement, we developed the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill of 2024, which is currently in Parliament for enactment. The bill seeks to enhance transparency and accountability, strengthen the role of the regulator to enforce standards, compliance, and sanctions for non-compliant procuring entities, promote the use of local content, and align with international best practices. I urge the honorable members to fast-track this enactment. Its enactment. Mr. Speaker, in order to fully automate public procurement and asset disposal processes, I launched the end-to-end e-government procurement system in April 2025. The e-government procurement system is a departure, a complete departure from the manual processes, and will lead to increased bidder participation, enhanced efficiency in processing of procurement requests, and increased authenticity of procurement documents through integration with various government systems. Mr. Speaker, the rollout of the e-procurement system is scheduled for July 2025. In order to ensure effective use of this system, the National Treasury rolled out the training of end users from procuring entities in both the national and county governments on the e-government procurement system phase 1 modules that cover procurement planning to contract management. We have since trained suppliers, and to date, 400 e-government procurement system end users comprising public finance management staff and suppliers from both the national and county governments have been trained in readiness for full rollout in July 2025. Next, I want to speak to restraining growth of public sector wage bill, which has been of serious concern. Mr. Speaker, the government continues to implement measures aimed at reducing the ratio of the government wage bill as a share of tax revenue, with a view to free much-needed resources for priority social and development spending. The government will implement the following initiatives to control the wage bill. First, the government will fully implement the unified human resource management system across all public sector entities by July 2025. This initiative is part of broader efforts to enhance public sector efficiency, improve management of wage bill, and ensure the effective utilization of public funds. Second, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission continues to sustainably reduce the number of allowances in public service through a phased approach aimed at streamlining allowances to improve transparency, accountability, equity, and fairness, thereby ensuring total public compensation bill is affordable and fiscally sustainable. To this end, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission will progressively review allowances and benefits in the future collective bargaining agreements, aligning them to the allowances policy guidelines for the public service. Allow me now to turn to state corporation reforms. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, state corporations are a major source of fiscal risks to public finances due to management and operational inefficiencies. An assessment conducted by the National Treasury to determine viability of state corporations identified critical gaps and vulnerabilities. Mr. Speaker, to address the vulnerabilities, the Cabinet in January 2025 approved reforms to streamline state corporations and enhance governance and accountability of the corporations. The reforms target to address operational and financial inefficiencies, enhance service delivery, and reduce over-reliance on exchequer support by state corporations. The approved reforms include the following. First, merger of 42 state corporations into 20 entities to improve operational efficiency and eliminate redundancy, as some have duplicating and or overlapping mandates. Second, dissolution of 25 state corporations and their functions transferred back to their parent ministries or other state corporations. Third, restructuring 6 state corporations to align their mandates for improved performances. Fourth, declassification of 4 public funds currently categorized as state corporations and transferring their functions back to the relevant ministries. And fifth, declassification of 13 professional bodies currently categorized as state corporations to private entities with no exchequer budget. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, in order to enhance operational efficiency, improve governance and ownership of state corporations, the government developed the Government-Owned Enterprises Bill of 2024. The bill is part of broader efforts by the government to streamline public enterprises, reduce fiscal risks, and enhance service delivery to citizens. The bill is currently before this August House for consideration. Thank you. I urge honorable members to favorably consider the bill to enable its enactment. Mr. Speaker, in order to secure the uptake of cotton production, while also providing alternative linked supplies for local apparel manufacturers, the Cabinet approved the revival and commercialization of Rivertex East Africa Limited by onboarding non-equity strategic partners. Mr. Speaker, on sugar sector reforms, His Excellency the President reaffirmed his commitment during this year's Madaraka Day celebrations to ensure the prompt payment of sugarcane farmers. The government has also taken practical steps to deliver its promise to modernize the mills and transform these once struggling factories into productive, sustainable enterprises. Currently, 4 state-owned sugar factories, Chemelil Sugar Company, Muhoroni Sugar Company, Nzoia Sugar Company, and South Nyanza Sugar Company, which is also known as Sony, have been placed under competitive leasing arrangements. This initiative is expected to enhance efficiency, restore profitability, and protect the livelihoods of farmers. Let me now turn to pending bills. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to resolving the long-standing issues of pending bills dating back to 2005 as part of broader efforts to strengthen public financial management and restore confidence in government processes. In this respect, the Pending Bills Verification Committee that was appointed in September 2023 is currently finalizing its report for submission by end of this month. Since its inauguration, the committee received a total of 65,625 pending bills claims valued at over 571.6 billion. The committee has analyzed 57% of the bills received valued at 522 billion. The 57% is in terms of numbers. Out of this, a total of 229 billion has been recommended for settlement. Once the committee submits its report, we shall submit the recommendations to Cabinet for approval to settle the pending bills. Let me now speak to national assets and inventory management reforms. Mr. Speaker, in order to promote prudent management of public assets and liabilities, the National Treasury digitized assets in the assets and inventory management modules in the IFMIS for use by both national government and county governments. Already, 52 state departments have gone live on the IFMIS asset module and are at various stages of uploading their registers for 6 asset categories, namely land, building, motor vehicles, ICT equipment, office equipment, and furniture and fittings. In addition, a roadmap is in place to roll out the module to the county government, and this reform will enable accounting officers have visibility of all assets and inventory under their control and facilitate optimal assets utilization. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, to enhance the management and utilization of public assets, the government is developing a policy on public sector asset valuation. The policy will support accurate financial reporting, strengthen fiscal discipline, and inform evidence-based public investment decisions. In addition, the government will develop framework to facilitate identification of public sector assets, and this will ensure accuracy and completeness of assets register, which are critical for transition to accrual basis of accounting. On financial sector reforms, Mr. Speaker, the banking sector has remained stable and resilient with a strong asset base, which grew by 1.5% from 7.6 trillion in April 2024 to 7.7 trillion in April 2025. To anchor the banking sector to continue playing its role in Kenya's socio-economic transformation, various reforms have been implemented, which include, first, the Central Bank of Kenya lifted the moratorium on licensing of new commercial banks in Kenya in April 2025. This is expected to attract foreign direct investment in the sector, resulting in competition and consequently reduced lending rates. Second, to promote the greening of banking sector, Central Bank of Kenya in April 2025 issued the Kenya Green Finance Taxonomy and the Climate Risk Disclosure Framework for implementation by the sector. The Kenya Green Finance Taxonomy is a tool to classify whether particular economic activities are green or environmentally sustainable and promote the transition to a low carbon economy. The climate risk disclosure framework is aimed at enabling banks to integrate climate-related risks into their governance, strategy, risk management, and disclosure frameworks. It is also intended to enable banks to leverage on business opportunities from efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And third, issuance of guidelines on global liquidity standards and leverage ratios. The Central Bank of Kenya in April 2025 issued guidelines on liquidity coverage ratio, net stable funding ratio, and leverage ratio for the banking sector. These guidelines will enhance the banking sector's liquidity and capital frameworks to promote greater financial stability and resilience, thereby ensuring that banks have the ability to withstand unexpected shocks, maintain stable funding, and manage their risk profiles effectively. Mr. Speaker, the Central Bank of Kenya, in collaboration with the National Treasury and other stakeholders, are developing the National Financial Inclusion Strategy for the period covering 2025 to 2028. The strategy provides a consolidated framework for advancing financial inclusion agenda to meet the needs of all Kenyans through deepening access and usage of financial services, enhancing quality of affordable financial products that meet consumer demands. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen digital finance in Kenya, the government will continue to implement the National Payment Strategy for the period 2022 to 2025 and fast-track finalization of a national policy on digital finance. In order to reform and modernize the national payment system, Central Bank of Kenya is doing the following. 1. Undertaking a comprehensive review of the national payment system legal and regulatory framework. 2. Implementing a fast payment system that seeks to address persistent challenges in interoperability, affordability, and the high cost of digital transaction. And third, effective 1st July 2025, the Kenya Electronic Payment and Settlement System will transition to a 24/7 settlement capability. This will support round-the-clock trade, enable faster clearing of government payments, facilitate real-time business-to-business transactions, and provide greater flexibility for consumers and financial institutions. Mr. Speaker, following the grey listing of the Republic of Kenya by the Financial Action Task Force in February 2024, the government has continuously addressed the technical deficiencies identified in Kenya's Mutual Evaluation Report, which was published by Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group in September 2024. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, one of the technical deficiencies identified in the Kenya's Mutual Evaluation Report was lack of a policy and regulatory framework to the virtual assets and virtual assets service providers. In order to regulate this sector, the government has developed the Virtual Asset Service Providers Bill 2025, which is currently before Parliament. Again, I urge honorable members to fast-track its enactment. On capital markets development, to further deepen the capital markets, the government continues to review the legal and regulatory framework to address emerging issues in the sector. In particular, the government overhauled the public officer regulations and collective investment schemes regulations to spur uptake of products while ensuring that investors are protected. The government has also approved new regulatory frameworks to support credit ratings and alternative investment funds, which have attracted a lot of interest from investors. Further, the government is in the process of reviewing the regulatory frameworks for licensing, margin trading, conduct of business for market intermediaries, and mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers. Once in place, these regulations will reinvigorate capital markets activity and make our capital markets more facilitative and efficient. Mr. Speaker, to diversify the government sources of financing, a Sukuk bond has been issued while other Sharia-compliant products are in the pipeline. The first Sukuk bond raised 3.2 billion, which has been effectively deployed in the affordable housing program and pension reforms. Mr. Speaker, in the Tax Laws Act, Mr. Speaker, now I turn to the pension reforms. Mr. Speaker, in the Tax Laws Amendment Act 2024, we introduced a number of incentives aimed at increasing disposable income to our senior citizens once they retire. And I thank this Honorable House for passing this Tax Laws Amendment Bill in December. We, among others, increased tax-deductible amount, removed tax on all retirement benefits, and introduced tax exemption on pension savings towards post-retirement medical schemes. Mr. Speaker, despite the reforms introduced in this sector, benefit adequacy remains a persistent challenge. Many retirees still find their pensions insufficient to meet their basic needs. And Mr. Speaker, the retirement benefits system predominantly covers the working population in the public and private sector to the exclusion of the unemployed population, who are majority in the informal sector. To address this, the National Treasury, in collaboration with key stakeholders, is implementing the National Retirement Benefits Policy. This policy outlines a clear, forward-looking strategy to address long-standing structural challenges, such as fragmented legal frameworks, exclusion of informal sector workers, limited medical cover for the elderly, weak portability mechanisms, and inadequate dispute resolution structures. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to fulfilling its obligations to retired public servants while ensuring that our pension systems is modern, inclusive, efficient, and sustainable. In this respect, the government is undertaking reforms aimed at delivering faster, more transparent, and citizen-friendly pension services. Key among these reforms is the re-engineering of the pensions management information system, which, together with the launch of a pension self-registration platform, will significantly improve data accuracy, enhance biometric verification, and reduce pension processing time from several months to less than 30 days. These reforms will also ensure real-time claims tracking, and integration with the national identification and payroll system, reducing errors and potential leakages. The re-engineered pension management system is planned for rollout on 1st of July 2025 and will transform pension administration by 1. Enabling ministries, departments, and agencies to submit pension claims online at source through integration with government human resource systems. 2. Allowing pensioners and beneficiaries to access services remotely and track the status of their claims in real time. And 3. Providing automated updates to clients on the progress of their claims through system-generated notifications. On insurance reforms, Mr. Speaker, to facilitate the growth of the insurance industry in Kenya, the government will speed up the approval of the National Insurance Policy and its implementation. The policy will guide the review of the Insurance Act, which has served its purpose, albeit with progressive amendments for the last 30 years. Mr. Speaker, the Insurance Regulatory Authority is undertaking focused training on livestock and crop insurance, targeting farmers and pastoralist communities. These efforts are aimed at improving understanding and access to agricultural insurance as a tool for mitigating climate-related risks and protecting livelihoods of farmers and pastoralist communities. The authority is also conducting a comprehensive money laundering and terrorist financing risk assessment on the vulnerability of the insurance industry. This will aid in the identification of areas of improvement so as to strengthen the supervisory framework. On reforms under the education sector, Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury is committed to upholding the right to education, including free and compulsory basic education as guaranteed under Article 53B of the Constitution of Kenya. While we are cognizant that examinations must be conducted as scheduled later this year, there is need to undertake a critical evaluation of the costing of examinations, assess the sustainability of the program in view of the prevailing fiscal constraints, and explore optimal options for delivering national examinations in order to ensure economy and value for money in public spending. Mr. Speaker, a key consideration is the merits of public funding of examination fees for all primary and secondary school candidates, including those from well-off households, as opposed to targeting the vulnerable students in our schools. We should also explore options of making the exercise of delivering national examinations simple and affordable without compromising the credibility of the exercise. To this end, the National Treasury is in consultations with the Ministry of Education on how best to achieve this at a minimal cost possible, including evaluating possible cost-sharing mechanisms. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to ensuring access to quality education for all children. In this regard, I assure the public and the 2025 examination candidates of our commitment to provide adequate funding for 2025 national examinations. On the fiscal policy framework, Mr. Speaker, the implementation of 2024-2025 budget has faced notable challenges, primarily following the withdrawal of the Finance Bill of 2024. Its withdrawal, alongside the associated public demonstrations, adversely affected economic activity and disrupted business operations across the country, compounding the fiscal pressures facing the government already. In response, the government undertook a revision of the fiscal framework through Supplementary Expenditure number 1 in August 2024. This revision reflected a lower revenue base following the preliminary outcomes of financial year 2023-24, while also addressing immediate cash flow constraints. These adjustments were critical to ensuring the continuity of public service delivery. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the mid-year economic disruptions, the budget execution has been further constrained by shortfalls in revenue and emerging expenditure pressures. Notably, the implementation of the collective bargaining agreements and funding requirements under the new university education financing model have placed significant demands on the available fiscal space. These challenges have led to cash flow pressures and a build-up of pending obligations, necessitating careful fiscal management and reprioritization. To address these evolving dynamics, the government prepared supplementary budget estimates to accommodate revenue shortfalls experienced during the current fiscal year and accommodated expenditure pressures. On domestic revenue mobilization, Mr. Speaker, in order to support our economic agenda and sustain key government programs, the government continues to implement a balanced mix of tax policy and administrative measures aimed at significantly boosting revenue collection. As part of the process, the government is focused on broadening the tax base while reducing the burden of compliance. In this regard, we have prioritized sectors such as the digital economy, agribusiness, and small and medium enterprises in tax education and outreach programs. In addition, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Revenue Authority continues to embrace modern technology to streamline tax processes, facilitate trade, and enhance voluntary compliance. A key milestone in this journey is the launch of Gava Connect, an open application programming interface platform that enables Kenyan developers to build homegrown solutions for efficient access to tax services. This program enhances service delivery, improves transparency, and strengthens our ability to detect tax evasion. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Revenue Authority has also introduced several digital tools to simplify compliance and boost operational efficiency. One is what we call auto-populated VAT returns for seamless, accurate tax filing. Two, simplified payee returns, accessible via mobile, web, and application program interface. Three, electronic rental income tax system that has enabled transparent rental income declarations. And four, forecourt electronic tax invoice management system integration in the petroleum sector, connecting fuel dispensers to point-of-sale terminals. This enables real-time transmission of sales data to electronic tax invoice management system, simplifying compliance and ensuring greater transparency in fuel transactions. Mr. Speaker, these solutions are more than just tech updates. They are the drivers of economic empowerment and accountability. Indeed, by simplifying tax procedures, developing user-friendly digital platforms, and providing on-the-ground support, Kenya Revenue Authority is nurturing a fair and inclusive tax culture, one that enables businesses to thrive while meeting their obligations. Mr. Speaker, building on the progress made, our focus in the financial year 2025-26 and over the medium term will be to strengthen domestic resource mobilization through the following key initiatives. First, continue with the implementation of the national tax policy and the medium-term revenue strategy to provide a consistent and predictable framework for tax administration and policy formulation. Second, continue with the automation of tax administration processes to improve the overall efficiency of the tax system. And third, enhancing non-tax revenue collection by enabling ministries, departments, and agencies to generate income through the services they provide to the public. Mr. Speaker, as part of our broader fiscal reform agenda, the government is undertaking targeted tax administrative reforms aimed at strengthening our revenue base and promoting inclusive economic growth. These reforms will focus on 3 key objectives. First, reducing tax expenditures. Mr. Speaker, tax expenditures stood at 3.38% of GDP in 2023. To unlock additional revenue for national governments, we must reduce that tax expenditure. Second, expanding the tax base and enhancing compliance, in line with the goals set out in the medium-term revenue strategy. And third, streamlining the tax structure to encourage domestic production, attract investment, and stimulate economic growth. Mr. Speaker, allow me to speak to improving efficiency of public expenditure. Here, Mr. Speaker, in our continued effort to ensure prudent fiscal management, the government will sustain and deepen measures aimed at strengthening expenditure control and enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of public spending. To this end, the government will implement a series of targeted actions, which include: 1, utilization of the launched end-to-end procurement system to maximize value for money, enhance efficiency and transparency in public procurement processes. 2, rolling out of a human resource management system across all national government ministries and departments, as well as county governments, to support better management of the public wage bill. 3, scaling up the use of the public-private partnerships framework for commercially viable projects to attract private sector participation in public service delivery, what we call PPP. 4, improving the public service pension administration through rolling out the pension management information system. And 5, fast-tracking governance reforms in state corporations to strengthen accountability, efficiency, and financial sustainability. I want to now turn to revenue projections. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, based on the outlined policy measures and structural reforms, total revenue collections, including appropriation in aid, for the financial year 2025-26 budget is projected to be at 3,321.8 billion, equivalent to 17.2% of GDP. Of this amount, ordinary revenue is projected at Kenya shillings 2,754.7 billion, which is equivalent to 14.3% of GDP. And ministerial appropriation in aid, or if you like, non-tax revenue, is projected at 567 billion shillings. Grants are projected at 46.9 billion, or 0.2% of the GDP. Having talked about revenue projections, let me now turn to expenditure projections. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure in the financial year 2025-2026 budget is projected at 4,291.9 billion, equivalent to 22.3% of GDP. And of this, recurrent expenditures will amount to 3,134.4 billion, equivalent to 16.3% of GDP. And development expenditures, including allocations to domestic and foreign finance projects, contingency fund, and equalization fund, will amount to 693.2 billion, equivalent to 3.6% of GDP. Total allocation to county governments is projected at 474.9 billion, of which equitable share is 405.1 billion. Fiscal deficit and financing. Mr. Speaker, the resultant fiscal deficit, including grants, is projected at 923.2 billion, which is equivalent to 4.8% of GDP, down from the estimated 997.5 billion, or 5.7% of GDP in financial year 2024-25. The fiscal deficit for the financial year 25-26 budget will be financed by net external borrowing of 287.7 billion, equivalent to 1.5% of GDP, and net domestic borrowing of 635.5 billion, which is equivalent to 3.3% of GDP. Public debt management. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's public debt is projected to remain with these sustainable levels over the medium term. In present value terms, the debt to GDP is projected to progressively decline from 63% in 2024 towards the debt anchor of 55% or minus 5% of GDP plus or minus 5% of GDP for 2028. To support the projected decline in debt levels, the National Treasury will continue implementing various reforms as guided by the medium-term debt management strategy, including liability management operations, continue pursuing use of concessional loans from multilateral, bilateral, and limited commercial sources such as international bond issuances. Additionally, reforms targeted to support domestic market development will eventually reduce the cost of public debt while sustaining fiscal consolidation efforts to ensure debt remains within sustainable levels. Further, the government will explore emerging funding instruments such as debt swaps, diaspora bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, and environmental, social, and governance debt instruments to fund budget deficit and manage public debt. This strategic approach will not only diversify our financing options, but also strengthen international partnerships and promote sustainable growth. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, the government is keen on sustaining transparency and improving efficiency on public debt service. To this end, the National Treasury is in the process of integrating the Commonwealth Meridian Debt Management System with the Integrated Financial Management Information System, IFMIS, and the core banking systems of Central Bank of Kenya. On public-private partnerships framework, Mr. Speaker, the government continues to strengthen the role of public-private partnerships in financing our development agenda. Currently, there are 32 PPP projects at various stages which are targeted to mobilize 70 billion shillings in the financial year 2025-2026 through private investments in priority sectors, including energy, water, housing, health, and transport. So, Mr. Speaker, to enhance transparency and accountability at all stages of project life cycle while implementing PPP, I recently issued a circular on mandatory disclosure requirements for all privately initiated proposals. This measure is part of our broader effort to strengthen the integrity of the PPP program and to ensure that private sector participation in public projects fosters public trust. Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury in May 2025 received the final report of the Committee of Experts on leveraging local financial markets for investment into public-private partnerships and implementation. The committee recommended the establishment and operationalization of PPP Implementation Trust Fund as the central mechanism for enhancing private sector participation in PPPs, particularly through institutional and retail entities. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the PPP regulations under consideration by Parliament will enhance clarity around PPP processes, thereby enhancing efficiency and project delivery. This will also unlock a pipeline of county-level specific PPP projects in partnership with development partners. In strengthening public finance management reforms, number one is migration to accrual accounting. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen management of public resources, all government ministries, departments, and agencies adopted accrual accounting as of 1st July 2024. The first accrual-based financial statements are expected for the financial year ending 30th June 2025, which is a few days away. The accrual accounting will enable the government to account for all assets and liabilities, including all government assets. Second, Treasury single account. Mr. Speaker, to enhance cash management, the migration of ministries, departments, and agencies to the Treasury single account is progressing well. The Central Bank of Kenya is scheduled to go live with its T24 system upgrade in July 2025. This upgraded platform will support the implementation of Treasury single account core functionalities and facilitate the National Treasury to roll out the key elements of the Treasury single account system. Concurrently, the National Treasury is on track to onboard county governments in 2026. The final phase will involve integrating all remaining national government entities into the Treasury single account by financial year 26-27. Third, zero-based budgeting. Mr. Speaker, to reorient the budgeting and expenditure framework, the government adopted the zero-based budgeting approach while finalizing the financial year 25-26 budget. To implement this approach, the National Treasury developed a budget costing tool that was integrated into the IFMIS budget module for the national government. The zero-based budgeting approach compels all ministries, departments, and agencies to justify expenditures from scratch, thus ensuring resources are allocated to high-impact activities. It promotes transparency, efficiency, by requiring clear justification and critical assessment of spending. Mr. Speaker, I know this statement is long. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, you know Kenya is not a small economy. We are number 6 in Africa. And we have jumped over Ethiopia. So you can't have a 3-pager statement for an economy as big as Kenya.
Gone without apology. Gone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
So far, so good.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I'm now turning to resource allocation so that honorable members can appreciate, and the Kenyan people, where we have allocated the limited resources that we have. Mr. Speaker, now let me highlight the government spending priorities for financial year 25-26. Expenditures for the financial year 25-26 will consolidate the gains realized under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, with special focus placed on promoting investment in core pillars and their enablers through a value chain approach. Number 1, under agricultural transformation and inclusive growth, which is the first pillar. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to transform the agriculture sector by increasing productivity in key value chains, such as fisheries and aquaculture, horticulture, food crops, livestock, and rangeland development. The government will scale up support to farmers through input financing, subsidies, and extension services. This will move the country from food deficit to food surplus, reduce reliance on food imports, and revamp export crops. Mr. Speaker, in this respect, I have proposed an allocation of 47.6 billion for various programs under this sector, despite the fact that agriculture is largely devolved. This includes 8 billion for the fertilizer subsidy program, 10.2 billion for the National Agricultural Value Chain Development Project, 800 million for small-scale irrigation and value addition project, 1.2 billion for food security and crop diversification project, and 5.8 billion for the food systems resilience project. Mr. Speaker, to promote livestock production, I have proposed Kenya shillings 2.3 billion for de-risking, inclusion, and value enhancement of pastoral economies programs. 1.6 million Kenya shillings for Kenya Livestock Commercialization Program. And 280 million for the Livestock Value Chain Support Project. I have also proposed Kenya shillings 340 million for the development leather industrial park at Kenani. Mr. Speaker, to support the growth of blue economy, I have proposed a total of 8.2 billion to the blue economy and fisheries subsector. This includes 2.3 billion for aquaculture business development project, 2.4 billion to the Kenya Marine Fisheries and Socio-Economic Development Project, and 500 million for the Kabonyo Fisheries and Aquaculture Training Center. Mr. Speaker, to raise agricultural productivity and enhance resilience to climate change risks in targeted smallholder farming and pastoral communities, I've proposed an allocation of Kenya shillings 318 million towards an ending drought emergencies project and 1.3 billion to resilience for food and the nutrition security program in Horn of Africa project. Mr. Speaker, the government is also committed to land reforms to address historical inequalities, promote equitable access, and ensure sustainable land management. To this end, I have proposed a sum of 3.8 billion for settlement of the landless. I have also proposed 1.1 billion for processing and registration of title deeds, another 712 million for digitization of land registries, another 200 million for georeferencing of land parcels, and 220 million for construction of land registries to safeguard legitimacy of land ownership. The next pillar is transforming the micro, small, and medium enterprises economy. Mr. Speaker, the government recognizes the challenge of accessing affordable credit by most micro, small, and medium enterprises, and Kenyans at the bottom of the pyramid. To address this challenge, I have proposed an additional allocation of 300 million to the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund, to scale up access to credit for households and MSMEs. I have also proposed an additional 308 million for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, 550 million for the Center for Entrepreneurship Project, and 1.3 billion for Rural Kenya Financial Inclusion Facility. Under housing and settlement, which is the other pillar. Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to facilitating the construction of decent, safe, and affordable houses for Kenyans. Through the affordable housing program, the government is creating jobs for the youth, directly in the construction sector and indirectly through the production and supply of building products. To continue supporting this initiative, I have proposed an allocation of 128.3 billion for the housing, urban development, and public works subsector. This includes 13.4 billion under the Kenya Urban Program, 64.5 billion for construction of affordable housing units, 10.5 billion for construction of social housing units, and 16.5 billion for social and fiscal infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations to the housing, urban development, and public works interventions include 7.2 billion shillings for the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Project Phase 2, 3.5 billion for the construction of housing units for the National Police and the Kenya Prison, 500 million for building climate resilience of the Urban Poor Program, 184 million for construction of footbridges, and 454 million targeted to support construction of county headquarters. Mr. Speaker, to ensure the safety of Kenyans through compliance with building codes and standards, as well as other industry regulations, I have proposed an allocation of 2.6 billion for the regulation and development of the construction industry. I am aware members are aware, I know members are aware of the challenges we have had where collapsed buildings kill many, many Kenyans as a result of carelessness of various developers. Let me turn to universal health coverage. Mr. Speaker, access to quality and affordable health care through the universal health coverage program is central to this government. Towards this end, Mr. Speaker, I have proposed an allocation of Kenya shillings 138.1 billion, up from 123 billion in the current year's budget, to the health sector to support various activities and programs. This includes 6.2 billion for universal health coverage, coordination and management, 13.1 billion for primary health care, and that is up from 7.1 billion in the current year, and 430 million to provide medical cover for the orphans, elderly, and disabled persons in our society. Mr. Speaker, to lower cases of HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis, and enhance vaccines and immunization program in the country, I have proposed 17.3 billion for the Global Fund and Kenya shillings 4.6 billion for vaccines and immunization programs, respectively. Mr. Speaker, to enhance early diagnosis and management of cancer and reduce the burden of treatment of chronic and critical illnesses among Kenyans, I have proposed an allocation of 8 billion to the Emergencies, Chronic and Critical Illnesses Fund to be managed by SHA, and this has moved from 5 billion shillings in the current budget. 1 billion for construction of a cancer center at Kisii Level 5 Hospital, 100 million to strengthen cancer management in Kenyatta National Hospital, and 100 million for expansion of comprehensive cancer treatment at Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital. Mr. Speaker, to improve health service delivery, I have also proposed a sum of 42.4 billion for our referral hospitals, including Kenyatta National Hospital, Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, Kenyatta University Teaching Referral and Research Hospital, Mwai Kibaki Teaching and Referral Hospital in Othaya, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital in Kisumu, and Madari National Teaching and Referral Hospital. Other locations include Kenya shillings 1.3 billion for the construction of Kenyatta National Hospital, Burns and Pediatrics Center. Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed 5.2 billion for Kenya Medical Supplies Agency to recapitalize it, 2.7 billion for the Kenya Medical Research Institute, 500 million for procurement of family planning and reproductive health commodities, and 300 million for procurement of equipment at the National Blood Transfusion Services. Further, to strengthen the capacity of medical personnel, I have also proposed an allocation of 4.3 billion for medical interns, 3.2 billion for community health promoters, 303 million for training of health personnel, and 8.9 billion for the Kenya Medical Training Centers, KMTCs. On digital superhighway and creative economy, which is the other pillar of the better principle, the government continues to invest in digital superhighway to improve ICT infrastructure and expand internet access nationwide. The creative industry is a significant source of employment, particularly for the youth, and has the potential to address high unemployment rates through promotion of music, theater, graphic design, digital animation, fashion and craft, among others. Mr. Speaker, to support growth in the digital superhighway, I have proposed an allocation of 12.7 billion to fund initiatives in the information, communication technology sector. Specifically, this proposed allocation includes 2.3 billion shillings for the construction of Kenya Advanced Institute of Science and Technology at Konza Technopolis, 3.7 billion for Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Project, and 333.2 million for government shared services, 382 million for the digital superhighway, 689 million for the establishment of digital hubs, and 750 million for maintenance and rehabilitation of national optic fiber backbone infrastructure. In order to fast-track the development of the Konza Technopolis city, I have proposed an allocation of 3.1 billion for Konza Data Center and smart city facilities. The government is also committed to enhance transparency, accountability, and efficiency in public procurement. I have, in this regard, proposed an allocation of 700 million for rolling out the implementation of the electronic government procurement system, what we call EGP, or EGP, EG procurement. Other key allocations to critical sectors supporting better include the following: investing in critical infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to invest in transportation networks, including roads, railways, and air travel, to reduce travel time and logistic costs, making markets more accessible and facilitating the movement of goods and people. Towards this end, I have proposed an allocation of 217.3 billion for development of roads across the country. This includes 30 billion to support construction of new roads and bridges, 70.8 billion for rehabilitation of roads, because we have so many long, the length of roads is so long that we have to maintain them and rehabilitate. And 115.6 billion for road maintenance. Actually, this 115 billion is more than the 85 million that we have in the current budget by 30 billion for maintenance of our roads. Mr. Speaker, to expand railway transport and its infrastructure, I have proposed an allocation of 38 billion shillings. I have also proposed an allocation of 450 million for the Kenya ferry ramp in Mombasa, 331 million for Nairobi bus rapid transport project, and 298.7 million for promotion of e-mobility projects. To facilitate movement of goods and people in our inland waters, I have also proposed an additional 110.4 million for acquisition of ferries for Lake Victoria. Mr. Speaker, to scale up production of reliable and affordable energy, I have also proposed an allocation of 62.8 billion to cater for key energy interventions. This includes 31.6 billion for the national grid system, 16.3 billion for rural electrification, 11.6 billion for development of geothermal energy, 2.1 billion for alternative energy technologies, and 743 million for development of nuclear energy. Let me now talk about improving education outcomes. Mr. Speaker, the education sector plays a vital role in economic development by enhancing human capital, driving innovation, and improving productivity. To this end, the government continues to invest in education to raise learning outcomes and ensure equal opportunities for all. Mr. Speaker, I have proposed a total allocation of 702.7 billion to the education sector, which is almost 28% of our entire budget. This will include an allocation of 387.2 billion to the Teacher Service Commission. The allocation for TSC will include 7.2 billion for recruitment of intern teachers and 980 for capacity building of teachers on competence-based education curriculum. Further, I have proposed an allocation of 7 billion for free primary education, 28.9 billion for junior secondary school capitation, and 51.9 billion for free day secondary education. In addition, Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed an allocation of 5.9 billion for administering the national examinations, 3 billion for the school feeding program, and 7.2 billion for the recruitment of intern teachers. I think that one I'd already mentioned, that's a repeat, and 4 billion for the technical, vocational, educational training and entrepreneurship project. Mr. Speaker, to enhance infrastructure development and provide a safe learning environment in our schools, I have proposed an allocation of 1.7 billion for primary and secondary schools infrastructure, and 1.4 billion for construction and equipping of technical training institutes and vocational training centers. In addition, I have proposed 13.3 billion for the Kenya Primary Education Equity in Learning Program, and 2.3 billion for the Kenya Secondary School Quality Improvement Project. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations to the education sector include 993 million for research, science, technology, and innovation, 41.5 billion to the Higher Education Loans Board for provision of loans to university and TVET students, and this has increased from 35 billion to 41.5 billion for health. Another 16.9 billion for scholarship for university students, and 7.7 billion capitation and scholarship for TVET students. In supporting manufacturing for job creation, Mr. Speaker, to continue promoting local industries, I have proposed an allocation of 18 billion under various implementing ministries, departments, and agencies. Out of this, 4.5 billion will support establishment of county integrated agro-industrial parks in various counties. 2.8 billion for supporting access to finance and enterprise recovery, what we call SAFER project. 602 million for a development of Athi River Textile Hub. 705 million for establishment of flagship export processing zones hubs. 504 million for development of special economic zone textile park in Naivasha. And 798 million for Kenya jobs and economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, in order to revitalize and maximize the benefits from our cash crops, I have proposed 2 billion for coffee cherry revolving fund and another 2 billion for coffee debt waivers. This is up from the 3 billion that was allocated to this subsector in the last financial year's budget. Another 1.5 billion for sugar sector reforms and 120 million for modernization and revitalization of cotton ginneries, and 245 million for horticultural produce compliance enhancement project. Mr. Speaker, to support local production and processing of edible oils, I have proposed an allocation of 300 million for the National Edible Oil Crops Promotion Project. Mr. Speaker, to enhance milk processing, I have proposed an allocation of 400 million for excess milk mop-up and 150 million for modernization of milk processing factories in Runyenjes and Narok. Mr. Speaker, to equip our youth with essential training and internship opportunities in trade and industry, I have proposed an allocation of 330 million for the Kenya Industry and Entrepreneurship Project. Another 500 million for the construction of industrial research laboratories and 109 million for constituency industrial development centers. Now let me speak to improving security. Mr. Speaker, a stable and secure environment fosters investment, trade, and overall economic growth. In this regard, I have proposed an allocation of 202.3 billion for defense, another 125.7 billion for the National Police Service, and 51.4 billion for the National Intelligence Service, another 32.5 billion for internal security and national administration, and 38.1 billion for prison services. I have also proposed an additional allocation of 10 billion to cater for leasing of police motor vehicles and 3.6 billion for police modernization program. Mr. Speaker, to combat crime and enhance administration of justice, I have proposed 1.2 billion for construction and modernization of national forensic facilities. Now, let me turn to protecting the vulnerable groups in our society. Mr. Speaker, social protection services are crucial for building more equitable and resilient societies by reducing poverty, inequality, and vulnerability, as well as promoting economic growth and social cohesion. I have in this regard proposed an allocation of 41.4 billion in this budget to protect the vulnerable members of our society and promote affirmative action. This is increasing from 33 billion in the current financial year's budget. Out of this allocation, 25.1 billion will cater for cash transfers to the elderly persons. And again, this has moved from 18 billion, so it has increased by 7 billion. 8.9 billion for cash transfers to orphans and vulnerable children. Again, that's a jump of 1 billion more. And 1.5 billion for cash transfers to persons living with disability. Again, this has been increased from 1.19 billion. Mr. Speaker, the proposed allocations also includes 3.9 billion for the Kenya Hunger Safety Net program, 450 million for the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya. In addition, there is 600 million which will go to the Child Welfare Society of Kenya, 100 million for the Presidential Bursary for Orphans, 180 million for the Street Families Rehabilitation Trust Fund, and 90 million for the National Albinism Support Program, and finally, 90 million for the National Autism Support Program. On equity, poverty reduction, women and youth empowerment. Mr. Speaker, unemployment remains one of the most persistent and challenging issues facing the country today. The challenge is not only about job creation, but also bringing the critical gap between education and employment and developing relevant skills for the modern economy. In order to empower the youth and support businesses owned by youth and women and to promote development in the constituencies, I have proposed 105.6 billion for these initiatives. This allocation includes 10 billion, I have proposed 105.6 billion, not million, for these initiatives. This allocation includes 10 billion for the National Youth Service, NYS, 3.6 billion to National Youth Opportunity Towards Advancement, what is famously known as NYOTA, and Kenya shillings 318 million for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. In addition, I have proposed 990 million for film development services. Mr. Speaker, to further empower our women and girls, I have proposed 353 million for the Women Enterprise Fund, 940 million for provision of sanitary towels to school-going girls, 254 million for strengthening prevention and response to gender-based violence in Kenya, 110 million for eradication of female genital mutilation, and 4 billion for the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, otherwise known as NGAF. Mr. Speaker, to promote regional equity, reduce poverty, and enhance social development across the country, I have proposed 58.8 billion for the National Government Constituency Development Fund, 9.6 billion for the Equalization Fund to finance programs in identified marginal areas or marginalized areas, and another 15.9 billion for the Kenya Devolution Support Program number 2. To stimulate tourism growth, sports, culture, recreational and arts, Mr. Speaker, in order to harness national pride, empower our youth and position Kenya as a regional beacon of talent and heritage, I have proposed an allocation of 29.7 billion to support sports, culture and recreation as well as tourism. This proposed allocation includes 13.5 billion for the Sports, Arts, and Social Development Fund. 2.3 billion to establish an automation and digitization system for the sports registrar. 241 million for the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya to make Kenya remain competitive in the athletics and other sports. 402 million for Sports Kenya. 245 million for the Kenya Academy of Sports. 8.2 billion for the Tourism Fund. And 4.8 billion for Tourism Promotion Fund. On environmental protection, water and natural resources, Mr. Speaker, to safeguard natural ecosystems, ensure sustainable water use, and tackle the impact of climate change, I have proposed an allocation of 10.7 billion for forest resources conservation and management, 1.6 billion for forest research and development, 3.7 billion for environment management and protection, 11.5 billion for the Kenya Financing Locally Led Climate Action Project, which is known as FLOCA, 1.6 billion for meteorological service, and 13.2 billion for wildlife security, conservation and management. Another 953 million for wildlife research and development. In addition, I have also proposed 1.1 billion for human and wildlife conflict compensation. Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed an allocation of 26.8 billion for water and sewerage infrastructure development. Out of this, 16.5 billion for water resources management and 1.9 billion for water storage and flood control. In addition, I have also proposed 15 billion for irrigation and land reclamation and 266 million for water harvesting and storage for irrigation. In order to improve governance and sustaining the fight against corruption, Mr. Speaker, to enhance good governance, intensify the fight against corruption, and entrench integrity and accountability in public service delivery, I have proposed Kenya shillings 4.5 billion for the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, 4.5 billion for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, 5.3 billion to the State Law Office, and 8.7 billion for the Office of the Auditor General. In addition, Mr. Speaker, to enhance the oversight and legislative role of Parliament, I propose an allocation of 48 billion for Parliament. To enable administration of justice, I also propose an allocation of 27.8 billion for the judiciary. Now let me turn to allocation to county governments. Mr. Speaker, to support devolution, county governments will receive 405.1 billion in the financial year 2025-2026 as an equitable share of revenue raised nationally, an increase of 17.6 billion from Kenya shillings 387.4 billion in financial year 24-25. The 405.1 billion represents 25.8% of the most recently audited revenues for financial year 2020-2021, way higher than the minimum of 15% prescribed in Article 203(2) of the Constitution. In order to ensure food and nutrition security, infrastructure development, improved water and sanitation systems, among others, county governments will receive an additional 69.8 billion as additional allocations. Equalization Fund. Mr. Speaker, to support implementation projects in the marginalized areas, 7.85 billion has been proposed as an allocation to the Equalization Fund in the financial year 2025-2026, and an additional 2.74 billion to settle outstanding arrears owed to the fund. Mr. Speaker, now allow me to speak to measures to enhance county government's own source revenue. Mr. Speaker, the own source revenue policy recommended the development of a national framework legislation to regulate the introduction of taxes, fees, and charges by county governments. Consequently, the National Treasury and other stakeholders developed the County Government Revenue-Raising Process Bill, which is currently before Parliament for consideration. Again, I urge the Honourable House to consider the bill and prioritize its enactment. Mr. Speaker, now let me turn to taxation measures. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to tax policy measures supporting the financial year 2025-2026. These measures include proposals contained in the Finance Bill 2025, as well as the customs duty measures agreed upon by the East African Community Ministers for Finance during the East African Community pre-budget meeting held in May this year, which I personally attended. These measures are set to take effect from 1st July 2025. Mr. Speaker, the freedoms we enjoy in this country have not come easy. In the last couple of years, Kenyans have spoken clearly and loudly on the desired direction in development of policy and governance of taxation. In 2023, the minority side in Parliament, supported by the efforts of the then ODM chairman, protested against the Finance Act of 2023. Last year, Mr. Speaker, some provisions in the Finance Bill 2024 triggered protests across the country. These actions in the 2 years regrettably resulted in the loss of lives and destruction of property and adversely impacted economic lives of many. In the remembrance of our fellow Kenyans who lost their most precious lives during these protests, allow me, Mr. Speaker, that we observe a minute of silence in their remembrance.
Will you be upstanding?
May their souls continue resting in eternal peace. Thank you, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, no life should be lost and no property should be destroyed again. The message from Kenyans was clear. Since I took office at the National Treasury and Economic Planning, I assured Kenyans that we shall strive to reduce tax burden. In this respect, the Finance Bill of 2025 has neither proposed new taxes nor raised any tax rates. Instead, we have chosen to enhance tax revenue collection through administrative reforms by simplifying and streamlining tax laws to make them clearer and easier to implement, thereby improving taxpayer compliance. The process also involves rationalization of tax expenditure to enhance equity and fairness. Mr. Speaker, the revenue foregone through tax incentives or tax expenditure has increased significantly, rising from Kenya shillings 393.1 billion, which is equivalent to 2.9% of GDP in 2022, to 510.6 billion, which is equivalent to 3.4% of GDP in 2023. To reverse this trend, the Finance Bill of 2025 proposes reforms to rationalize tax expenditures so as to promote equity, fairness, efficiency, distortions within the national tax, which this honorable from the proposed Mr. Speaker, intended and ensure they are. The meeting allowed a lower duty rate. In addition, remission to import wheat farmers. I will begin measures and on the proposal 2025. To meet was external tariff or rates of USD 345 per metric ton. Mindful of wheat farmers in Kenya, East African Community Ministers agreed on duty remission of wheat at a rate of 10% instead of the common external tariff rate of 35%, provided the millers who intend to import wheat under the duty remission must first purchase locally produced wheat. Mr. Speaker, to promote local assembly of telecommunication equipment, Kenya was granted an extension of duty remission on inputs for assembly of telecommunication devices, including mobile phones, laptops, and tablets. Mr. Speaker, in order to reduce the production cost of animal feeds, Kenya requested for an extension to import inputs for production of animal feeds duty-free under the East African Community Duty Remission Scheme, which was granted. We urge the producers of animal feeds to apply for the remission. Mr. Speaker, the leather sector is one of the priority value chains under BETA. To support local producers of leather and leather products, Kenya was allowed to extend the stay of application on the common external tariff rate and apply import duty rate of 35% on leather products. To promote tanneries to supply local manufacturers with high-quality leather, Kenya was allowed to import chemicals for leather processing under duty remission. Mr. Speaker, to support local assembly of transformers, which is critical to energy distribution, the East African Community Ministers approved Kenya's request for a tariff split on transformers to provide for a distinction between fully built and unassembled transformers. Currently, it is one line, tariff line, and it is very difficult for us to separate and incentivize either of them. So, Mr. Speaker, to support the local assemblers of cranes, Kenya was granted approval to import inputs for assembly of cranes duty-free under duty remission. Mr. Speaker, last year Kenya was granted a stay of application on the East African East African Community Common External Tariff to apply a higher duty rate ranging from 25 to 35% on certain types of paper used in manufacturing packaging materials. This action adversely affected exporters, particularly in tea sector. To address this, Kenya opted not to request for an extension of the stay of this common external tariff. And this decision will not affect local manufacturers of packaging materials, as they will continue importing raw materials under duty remission. So, Mr. Speaker, now let me speak to the Finance Bill of 2025. Let me now highlight some of the proposals contained in the proposed Finance Bill 2025 under Income Tax Act. Mr. Speaker, to enable faster recovery of investment by businesses on loose items such as utensils, linen, and industrial tools, the bill proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to allow for a full cost deduction of these items in the first year of purchase, as opposed to the current 3 years. This will improve cash flows of the relevant businesses. Mr. Speaker, we have noted increased tax disputes arising from audits carried on cross-border transactions. These disputes could have been avoided if the multinational companies had advanced pricing agreements with the commissioner at KRA. To address this gap, the bill is proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to empower the commissioner to enter into advanced pricing agreements with multinational companies. Mr. Speaker, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, passed in December last year, introduced the minimum top-up tax in line with the global best practices. But the Act inadvertently omitted the due date for payment of the tax, thus creating enforcement challenges. To address this, I have proposed an amendment to the Income Tax Act to clarify that the due date will be the end of the 4th month following the close of a company's accounting period. Mr. Speaker, again, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, passed in December last year, exempted gratuity payments from income tax, actually pension and gratuity. However, the provision is not clear whether all gratuity, including from private pension schemes, is exempted from tax. In this respect, the bill is proposing to amend the Income Tax Act to clarify that all gratuity payments, whether from public or private sources, are exempt from tax. Mr. Speaker, to encourage wider participation in virtual asset transactions, especially among the youth, the bill proposes to reduce the digital asset tax rate from 3% to 1.5%. And Mr. Speaker, to ensure consistent and effective administration of the law, the bill proposes to amend the third schedule to the Income Tax Act to clarify that fringe benefit tax is payable by the employer at the corporate tax rate, and that withholding tax on qualifying dividends and qualifying interest are final tax. That is not clear in the current arrangement. And Mr. Speaker, under the current Income Tax Act, individuals with mortgages, and honorable members would be interested in listening to this. Mr. Speaker, under the current Income Tax Act, individuals with mortgages for purchasing or improving residential houses can claim tax relief on interest payment on the mortgage. However, those who take up a mortgage to construct their own residential houses are excluded from this relief. That is the law as it is today. To ensure fairness, the bill proposes to extend this benefit to interest on mortgages taken for construction of residential houses. This will support home ownership and align with the better pillar on affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, the current tax-free daily subsistence allowance of $2,000 for private sector employees on official duties outside their usual workplace is lower than that of the public sector employees. To enhance equity, the bill is proposing to increase the tax-free daily subsistence allowance for private sector employees from 2,000 to 10,000 shillings. Mr. Speaker, Kenya has an opportunity to strengthen its position as a regional financial hub. In this respect, the bill proposes amendment to the Income Tax Act to provide that companies certified by the Nairobi International Financial Center Authority, NIFCA, that invest new capital of at least $3 billion over a period of 3 years to pay a reduced corporate tax rate of 15% for the first 10 years and 20% for the subsequent 10 years. The companies qualifying for this will be required to employ Kenyans at senior management level. The startup companies that are certified by Nairobi International Financial Center Authority will enjoy a 15% tax rate for the first 3 years and 20% for the subsequent 4 years. And dividends earned by certified holding companies and regional headquarters will be exempted from tax provided that at least 250 million is reinvested annually in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we have noted that some employees seek refunds from KRA on reliefs of deductions that ought to have been deducted by their employers. To address this challenge, the bill proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to make it mandatory for employers to consider all eligible tax reliefs and deductions when computing employees' income tax. Presently, employers are not compelled to deduct these reliefs in computing pay as you earn. Value-added tax. Mr. Speaker, while a supplier is required to issue a tax invoice at the point of sale, there is currently no definition of tax invoice under the VAT Act. This creates ambiguity on what constitutes a tax invoice. To resolve this ambiguity, the bill is proposing to amend the VAT Act to define a tax invoice. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen tax administration and enhance compliance, the bill proposes to require the issuance of tax invoices for all suppliers, whether taxable or exempt. This amendment will support better record keeping by taxpayers and facilitate the pre-population of returns. Mr. Speaker, to support business operations, the bill proposes to shorten the period for claiming refunds on bad debts from 3 years to 2 years, and to allow taxpayers to either request for a refund or offset it against future VAT liabilities. Mr. Speaker, again, entities in special economic zones currently benefit from VAT exemptions and zero rating, but there is no provision to recover tax when these benefits are misused or abused. To safeguard revenue and promote accountability, the bill proposes to recover VAT where exempted or zero-rated goods or services are used for purposes other than those intended. Mr. Speaker, to prevent leakages or revenue leakages, strengthen tax administration and promote equity across sectors. The bill proposes to move some zero-rated goods and services that are consumed locally to exempt status. Further, Mr. Speaker, some of the goods exempted from VAT have multiple uses, making it difficult to effectively monitor whether they are finally used for the intended purpose. In this respect, the bill proposes to amend the VAT Act to remove such exemptions. Under excise duty, Mr. Speaker, to minimize tax disputes relating to classification of locally produced excisable goods, the bill proposes an amendment to the Excise Duty Act to clarify that the East African Community Common External Tariff and its classification rules shall apply to all excisable goods, both imported and locally manufactured. Mr. Speaker, to streamline the processing of application for license to manufacture excisable goods by the Commissioner, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to require the Commissioner to provide feedback on the application within 14 working days from the date of receipt of all valid documents. Mr. Speaker, the Excise Duty Act provides for taxation of alcoholic beverages based on pure alcoholic content, which increased cost for producers using spirits over 90% alcohol content as raw materials from 356 shillings to about 1,000 shillings per litre. Since undenatured extra-neutral alcohol is a key input in the manufacturing of spirituous beverages, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to provide an excise duty rate of 500 shillings per litre for undenatured extra-neutral alcohol above 90% strength supplied to licensed spirituous beverage manufacturers. Mr. Speaker, to promote equity and fairness in taxation of accessible services offered through the internet or electronic network, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to bring non-resident persons without a physical presence in Kenya into the tax net when they supply accessible services through these mediums. Mr. Speaker, to avoid double taxation of fees charged by digital lenders, the bill proposes to amend the definition of digital lender under the Excise Duty Act to exclude entities licensed under the Banking Act, the Cooperative Societies Act, and the Microfinance Act. Honorable members, to enhance clarity and consistency in the administration of excise duty legislation, the bill is proposing to amend the Excise Duty Act to clarify that imported plastic products, including plates, self-adhesive plastics, and printed polymers, will be subjected to excise duty at 25% of the excise value, or 200 per kilogram, whichever is higher. Now let me speak to miscellaneous fees and levies. Mr. Speaker, the Export and Investment Promotion Levy on billets and wire rods, which are raw materials in manufacture of nails, fencing wires, gabions, bolts, and nuts, have raised production costs of these products. In this respect, the bill proposes to amend the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act to review the levy downwards. Mr. Speaker, to promote Nairobi as regional aircraft maintenance hub while managing tax expenditures, the bill proposes to amend the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act to introduce import declaration fee and railway development levy on small aircrafts and helicopters, but retain the exemption on spare parts of all aircrafts. The Tax Procedures Act, 2015. No, this is the Act is 2015. Mr. Speaker, to enhance the Commissioner's ability to recover unpaid taxes from non-residents, the bill is proposing to amend the Tax Procedures Act to expand the scope of agency notices to include non-resident persons. Mr. Speaker, and this is controversial, to close a loophole that hinders enforcement of tax compliance and ensure timely revenue collection, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to clarify that enforcement of tax collection when a tax appeals to be done or a court judgment on tax dispute is in favor of the Commissioner shall only be suspended where a stay order has been granted. That is not the one that I thought I was going to read. The controversial one is yet to come. Mr. Speaker, to remove the financial and legal barriers that may hinder effective enforcement of recovery of unpaid taxes, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to provide that property transfers made by or to the Commissioner in recovery of tax liabilities be exempted from stamp duty. Mr. Speaker, to promote transparency, uphold fair administrative action, and strengthen trust in tax administration, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to require the Commissioner to provide reasons when issuing amended tax assessments to a taxpayer, so that we avoid misuse of Kenya Revenue Authority for political reasons, where they just sit and tell you that 3 years ago you did not pay such and such, and yet you had already been cleared for tax purposes. Reasons must be provided. Mr. Speaker, to address taxpayers' concerns regarding penalties and interest arising from system-related delays or administrative errors beyond taxpayers' control, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to allow the Cabinet Secretary to grant waivers on penalties and interest arising from such circumstances upon recommendation by the Commissioner. Presently, if there is any error made by the Kenya Revenue Authority on your tax assessment, there is no law to reverse it. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker and fellow Kenyans, we have experienced a wide range of challenges as a nation in the past 2 years. In navigating these trying times, we have demonstrated exceptional resilience and remained steadfast in our development and democratic journey. Kenyans have demonstrated commendable patience and resilience as the government continues to fulfill its commitments to improve livelihoods through the implementation of better. And under the leadership of His Excellency the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, we have made meaningful progress in advancing our development agenda, promoting inclusion, fostering national unity, and working together to build our nation and renew the spirit of patriotism. Mr. Speaker, the budget I have presented today has been thoughtfully prepared to navigate the delicate balance of competing interests while adhering to our fiscal consolidation plan. Mr. Speaker, I am confident that the policies and structural reforms I have outlined provide a solid foundation for sustaining our socio-economic transformation. These measures are designed to stimulate job creation, strengthen our economic recovery, and ease the cost of living. I therefore call upon honorable members and all Kenyans to support the implementation of the budget as we work together in pursuit of shared prosperity. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the journey to a prosperous Kenya calls for leadership and collective commitment of all Kenyans. Last year, the Orange Democratic Movement joined hands with the United Democratic Alliance under Kenya Kwanza to form a broad-based government. This unity has brought renewed peace and stability to Kenya and fostered inclusive development beyond tribal lines. I wish thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wish to acknowledge with gratitude the unwavering leadership and vision of His Excellency the President Dr. William Samoei Ruto and His Excellency the Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki. I also wish to recognize the invaluable efforts of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Attorney General, my fellow Cabinet Secretaries, Principal Secretaries, Accounting Officers, and all personnel across government ministries, departments, and agencies who have diligently contributed to the development of the financial year 2025-2026. Mr. Speaker, I want to sincerely thank Baba, Right Honorable Raila. Thank you, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, I sincerely thank Baba, Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, and the entire Orange Democratic Movement fraternity for their invaluable mentorship as well as trusting me with party leadership positions in my political journey. But Mr. Speaker, I will not forget that I served the people of Suba South constituency as their elected representative for a period of 15 years and a further 2 years as nominated member of parliament before my appointment to the cabinet. I truly appreciate the people of Suba South constituency for the opportunity they gave me to serve them, and I will remain forever grateful. In addition, I served in the leadership of parliament as a minority leader, and equally, I appreciate the support accorded to me by this House and its leadership during my tenure. My sincere appreciation goes first to you, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, and your counterparts in the Senate, the majority and minority leaders, and the entire House leadership, including respective clerks, supporting the approval process of the financial year 2025-2026 budget. Second, to honorable chairs and members of both the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the Finance and National Planning Committee and all the other departmental committees of this House, as well as the staff of Parliamentary Budget Office for their constructive inputs and leadership during the approval process of this budget. Third, my colleagues at the National Treasury and Economic Planning, led by Dr. Chris Kipto, the Principal Secretary for the National Treasury, Dr. Boniface Barasa Makoha, the Principal Secretary for the State Department for Economic Planning, and Mr. Cyril Wagunda Odede, the Principal Secretary for Public Investments and Assets Management, for their commitment, dedication, and support in their preparation of this budget. Fourth, special appreciation goes to Mr. James Muhati, the former Principal Secretary for the State Department for Economic Planning, for his unwavering commitment and invaluable support during the first half of the financial year. His dedication and strategic leadership greatly advanced the ministry's mandate and played a pivotal role in shaping key national economic planning initiatives. Fifth, my appreciation goes to the Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, the Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority, as well as the management and staff of both institutions, the financial sector regulators, and other MDAs for their valuable contributions to the budget process. Sixth, my gratitude goes to our multilateral and bilateral development partners for their continued technical and financial support. Seven, I also thank the private sector for their participation and contribution in the budget process. And eight, I wish to appreciate the media and non-state actors for their active engagement and participation in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. Mr. Speaker, I forever remain indebted to my beloved wife, Madam Rhoda Mbadi, and my children, who is here in the Speaker's Gallery, and my children for their support and inspiration as I execute my duties at the National Treasury and Economic Planning. Their prayers and guidance gave me the zeal to proceed even during my lowest moments. I remain deeply grateful also to my siblings for raising me, paying my school fees, and supporting me throughout my journey. Mr. Speaker, I am sure that my late parents, Jadun Stanislaus Ngongomoth and his babe, Slermina Yambu Ngongo, with my mother, are smiling down from above as they see their youngest son perform this great service for the great people of Kenya today. God is truly faithful. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, my utmost gratitude goes to all Kenyans for their contributions during the budget process. Thank you, and may God bless Kenya. Mr. Speaker, before I resume my seat, you will recall that I have already submitted to this House the budget estimates and the Finance Bill 2025, together with the accompanying documents as required by the Public Finance Management Act 2012. Today, I further submit the following documents for this August House and request that you graciously receive them. 1, budget statement for the financial year 2025-26. 2, the 2025 budget policy statement. 3, estimates of revenue, grants and loans for the financial year 2025-2026. 4, financial statements for the financial year 2025-26. 5, medium-term debt management strategy 2025. 6, budget highlights, the Mwananchi guide for the financial year 2025-26. And finally, statistical annex to the budget statement for the financial year 2025-2026. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Minister. You may now take your seat. Thank you, CS, for just above 2 hours well spent in presenting your first budget highlights to this House. Honorable members, I wish to thank the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning for ably making a public pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and the revenue-raising measures for the national government for the financial year 2025-2026 and the medium term. I confirm that in conformity with the provisions of Section 39 and 39A of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 412A, and the Standing Order 244C, the Cabinet Secretary had already submitted to the National Assembly the relevant legislative proposals necessary to actualize the revenue-raising measures to finance the 2025-2026 budget. This has since culminated in the Finance Bill 2025, which is under consideration by this House. Honorable members, it is my pleasure to invite all members, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning, other Cabinet Secretaries, and all invited guests to a reception at the Parliamentary Courtyard. Honorable members, the time now being 5:23 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, 17th June 2025 at 2:30 p.m. I thank you.
That marks the climax of the budget